Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson with you, Josh Briscoe and Drake. We head up until 2 o'clock. We've got you for the next 4 hours. A lot of stuff to get into and talk about today. Jam-packed show. We will hear from the Kansas City Chiefs there in St. Joe. A longer practice today, so sometime in the 11 o'clock hour, we will hear from Steve Spagnuolo, Nick Bolton, Jalen Watson, and Blake Bell. So 3 of the 4 being defensive guys, and then Blake Bell. So that comes up in the 11 o'clock hour. We will break the norm with Les Norman, presented by TruckMovers.com and First Federal Bank of Kansas City. And we will talk with him about the Kansas City Royals, 7-3 in their last 10 games. So we'll talk with him about this Kansas City Royals team, what they have done, 3 more against the Red Sox, and then they will return home for a 6-game set, 2 against St. Louis and then 4 against the Mariners, but 3 more against the Red Sox with Brady Singer going to the mound tonight, taking on Qatar Crawford. That comes up just after 6. Is it Cutter? Okay, Cutter.
No one's quite sure.
But by the way, a great name for a pitcher, Cutter.
Incredible.
Oddly enough, he doesn't throw one, but you would think that'd be the first one that he learned was a cutter.
It's a really missed branding opportunity.
Yeah.
Speaking of branding opportunities, I think that we just let Les sit in that chair at noon and say, Les, umpires. And then we just leave the studio. We just let him go for half an hour. We can come back when he's ready to take a break.
Wind him up, tap him on the head, and watch him go.
This is the most excited I've been for a Les segment in a while, and I always enjoy our chats with Les.
Yes. And then we will talk with Adam Teicher coming up at 1 o'clock from ESPN Chiefs Insider. We will talk with him about what's going on with the Chiefs in training camp, game week, preseason game number 1 against the Saints coming up Sunday on NBC at noon. We will talk with him about the rest of this week and what's happened over the last week or so, and some things going on there and some things going on off the field with Charles Omenihu's suspension and Chris Jones still with the holdout, Kadarius Toney's injury, Isaiah Pacheco still wearing the yellow jersey, and some positives that he has seen from this Chiefs organization, this Chiefs team. So we'll do that coming up in the 1 o'clock hour. And the fact that the Chiefs are so top-heavy, and I'm just not sure that you can win a Super Bowl with only 3 real stars on your team. Of course, if those are in the top 10 with Patrick Mahomes being number 1, Travis Kelce, number 5.
Yep.
And Chris Jones, number 10.
That's right.
Chris Jones was told he was number 10. He thought he should be number 5. I did enjoy that interview part of it with Chris Jones. Like, where do you think you should be? I should be in the top 5. What if I told you were in the top 10? Am I in the top 5?
You're definitely in the top 10.
Definitely in the top. If I'm in the top 5, I'm going to take a chair and pound it over. So come on. You're in the top 10. That means I'm not top 5. God dang it. He wants to be top 5. You know what that means? Sign the contract, Chris. If you were top 5, I could get it. Hold out. But you're not even top 5 in the NFL. Why do you think you should be paid the way that you are? It's ridiculous that he wants that money being number 10.
Unfortunately, what he's actually doing now is that he is going to hold out from next year's top 100 list.
That's right.
And it's really disappointing because I think that's going to be a problem.
He is top 5. It is amazing the fluctuation from one year to the next of how high guys can be voted and then low and then dropping in or dropping out and then showing up all of a sudden. And, of course, the Chiefs get 3 in the top 10, and NFL.com has their top 5 misses or issues with the top 100. Number 1 was the Chiefs. How did they only get 3 players?
Right. Where is Creed Humphrey?
It's amazing. It's Creed Humphrey, Nick Bolton, and L'Jarius Sneed were specifically mentioned that should have been in the top 100. So according to NFL.com, these are the issues I have with it. Chiefs should have got 6 players in the top 100. They only got 3 in the top 10. If this was just a top 10 list, everybody would be pumped and ecstatic, and it would be all about the Chiefs. But I thought that was kind of funny because even the Chiefs tweet with Creed Humphrey just staring at the camera as we watch the top 100. There are no centers on the list that don't have a podcast.
Wow. Okay. Hey, Creed Humphrey.
So, there you go.
We got a studio over here. You want to be in the top 100? Let's go.
You get a podcast as a center, you're in top 100.
That's a great point.
There are 0 centers on this top 100 list that don't have a podcast.
I think
100% of centers with a podcast are in this top 100.
That's what I was just going to say is I think 100% of active NFL centers with a podcast.
Correlation causation, if you ask me.
I think it's at least worth a shot, Creed.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can get our address online. I can text it to you, whatever. I mean, Creed did a show with us, I guess, at the MVS charity softball game for a while, but it wasn't. I podcasted it, but we were live at the time.
We could call it Oh Snap.
So great.
It's really good.
So great.
You know my favorite stat about the NFL Top 100 last night?
What's that?
Patrick Mahomes moved up 7 spots.
He was number 8 last year.
He was number 8 last year. He was behind Jonathan Taylor and Cooper Kupp, among others.
Actually behind Jonathan Taylor Thomas,
Which
too.
really felt offensive.
It's odd, man.
Really offensive.
Yes, and then Patrick's like, oh. It's a Tool time.
No, okay, I know Tool Time. That's well within my bag, pun intended.
That's there.
I know. I don't. This is about either my parents or my current media consumption, but I could bump, bump, bump. I got that in there forever.
Oh,
Why is Tim the Toolman Taylor living in my head? I don't know. I don't know, but I cannot get him out.
Nobody knows.
Please, Tim.
That's how the show lines up. 913-912-4810 is the text line to join us. 913-912-4810. Let me pull up the text line so when those texts do start rolling in, I'll be able to at least read them, whether or not they make it on the air or not. I do read them, especially the very nice ones.
Text in your best Tool Time impressions.
Ooh. It's going to be hard for
I know.
the written.
I know. That's
word.
what I'm really anticipating. Actually, is I would like to really just see how you try to pull that off, texters.
That's right.
You guys are talented.
All right, let's get into the show. We will talk some Chris Jones. We'll talk some Kadarius Toney, but we'll talk a lot of Chiefs today. Let's start with the Royals, actually. Let's start with the Royals. The Royals have lost 3 in a row, and we're going to start with them. And I'm going to start with this. Cole Reagans.
Yeah,
That's what I want to start with.
we should.
That's what I want to talk about because that's the story from last night, even though the tweets that I had was about they were about the first base umpire, Vic Carapazzo. But let's talk Cole Reagans. 6 2/3 last night, 4 hits, 1 earned run, 1 walk, 11. His strikeouts go up to 11. 11 strikeouts last night for Cole Reagans. They bring him back out for the 7th, and he gets 2 outs, both by Ks. Strikes out 5 of the last 6 batters. He now has thrown 17 2/3 innings for the Royals. He's given up 15 hits, 4 walks, so barely a base runner per inning for his whip. 4 walks, 22 strikeouts, the 2 earned runs, a 1.02 ERA, and barely a 1 whip. He has been awesome. The traditional numbers have been there with the innings pitched, strikeouts, walks, ERA, whip, things like that. The traditional numbers have been there. The scout's eye from what he looks like on the mound, the stuff, how it plays, and the analytics with the RPMs and the fastball spin rate and the changeup spin rate and the slider and the things that the analytics part of it, the advanced numbers, love about Cole Reagans. I certainly didn't think that when they traded Aroldis Chapman, we'd be talking about the 25-year-old pitcher with a 6 ERA being the guy that has been impressive. I certainly didn't think that when we lament the fact that why can't the Royals just have somebody get to the big leagues and perform? Why is it that they're so rare, the Salvies, the Danny Duffy to a degree, but so many other guys that had promise coming up that were just like, oh, they're struggling for a year and a half. Why can't the Royals just get somebody to come up and perform? And this wasn't even the Royals. This was a first-round draft pick by the Rangers back in 2016 from high school. Not 1, but 2 different Tommy John surgeries. Coming back from Tommy John, is finally healthy, feels good, 4 miles an hour faster this year than a year ago, now that he is fully healthy from Tommy John surgery. And he looks the part. That is incredibly encouraging because, 1, he's got to the Royals and just performed. So that's nice. Check that box off. 2, the numbers, the scouts, and the analytics all love him. Rob Friedman, Pitching Ninja, loves Cole Reagans. I haven't seen if he's got a tweet from last night's filthiest pitches yet, but the last time Cole Reagans had a start, he was top 5 in Pitching Ninja's filthiest pitches. He had one of the 5 filthiest pitches of the night. I don't know if he's done that today or not. He typically goes back through and watches all of the pitches in baseball that took place yesterday and then ranks his filthiest pitches, things like that. So this is incredibly encouraging. It's exciting. It's a concern because you wait for the other shoe to drop. We were feeling like this with Kris Bubic after 3 starts, and that was then the end of that. He's now,
I can't believe that was only 3 starts.
Having Tommy John surgery. Luckily, Cole Reagans is on the other side. And not only that, the Royals, maybe for the first time in our lives, have taken another team's cast-off that wasn't performing and has done one thing or another, or a tweak here or there, or just a change of scenery, and this guy is now performing at, through 17 innings, an elite level.
And I love that I'm going to start calling it the trifecta here of the eye test, the analytics, and the scouting.
Yeah.
Because Reagans really can claim all 3 of those things. And not only is it the Royals taking another team's cast off and getting more out of it. We may have mentioned this when Andy Rogers' story came out, whenever this was. It was a week or 2 ago now. But the blurb about specifically his slider and this quote from Paul Gibson, the Royals senior director of pitching, that was something that he presented to us. We asked what he wanted to work on. He said, I want to be better against left-handed hitters, and I think the slider is the way to do that. We thought the same thing, so let's go get it. Dane and I, in catch and bullpens, we found a grip that was comfortable, and the movement was consistent. Reagan said we took it and ran with it. We took the Royals pitching staff and a new pitcher took it and ran with it, and he has looked, and this hasn't been at the consequence of the rest of his arsenal. This has not been an experimental time where he says, hey, look, no worries if he gets hit around a little bit. He's working on the slider grip. He has just shown some of his best performances you could possibly ask for in this debut. It is good process on several levels.
Yeah.
That, to me, is just as exciting as the results. Because it was good process to say, hey, we're gonna send a roll this Chapman, we're gonna take this guy back, and now this what we thought we had this discussion, and we maybe thought the Royals could have disagreed at the time of, hey, is the Jim here this pitcher who's got a couple Tommy Johns in his history, or is it this young kid who we haven't seen on anything other than 180p footage for the most part, but we think he's coming, we think there's something here. Either way, you got 2 bites at the apple. Whoever the Royals actually thought that was going to be the crown of that trade. You have positive pitching development, an immediate success story, and just nice results right away. You could knock me over with a feather, but I am thrilled.
There he goes. He's down. Down goes Briscoe.
I'm thrilled with the results, Jason.
Down goes Briscoe.
Somebody should vacuum down here.
They did last night, actually, every single night. It's very nice. She's a lovely lady. Those are really good points about the Royals bringing him in, asking what he thinks he should improve on or wants to do, and then working with him. Also, it's not like I think we can point to like Brady Singer and we can point to Jacob Junis, because when we had Dayton Moore on, and Dayton Moore had said that, we wanted Jacob Junis to work with a slider. We wanted him to work with a slider. And then he goes to the Giants, and that's what he's working off of. So it was what we wanted to have happen. Okay, well, there was something in the communication that was lost in translation between your people in charge and this pitcher, and the feeling in the clubhouse of they've seen other guys go somewhere else and get better. And is there a trust or lack thereof from the higher-ups to the scouts to the coaches to the players? And this is one to where he already had a number of pitches in his arsenal. It wasn't just a 2-pitch guy that the Royals are saying, we'd really like you to try to develop this. Well, I'm kind of always been able to be successful here, and I've never really had issues. And what do you want to work on? Okay, that aligns with what we were thinking too. If it didn't align, I don't know, what would the process be? If it was, well, I'd really like to work on my split finger. You don't have one. Yeah, but I want to develop one. And, well, what about your slider? I'm not going to throw it anymore. I'm done throwing the slider. Well, we think you should. Like, it wasn't that. But they both had the same view. The pitcher had this feel of, this is what I have to improve on. And the Royals were like, yeah, we saw the same thing. So that's certainly good news in being aligned. Whatever the process, whatever has happened, watching him right now, 3 starts in, has been really impressive and exciting. And we'll see as he goes to the mound more and more if there's the, quote, adjustment that's there. But the adjustment can come as long as the stuff continues to play like that. When he's throwing a fastball that's in the upper part of the strike zone and then has that last skip that rises a little bit, that vertical skip, that's different. I am not saying he is this, okay? So listen to me on my preface. I am not saying he is this. Okay. But one of the things that I was just floored by in watching a major league pitcher, or what would be a major league pitcher, up close and personal. I've told this story before. My brother and nephew and I, we went out to watch Missouri, Kansas play baseball because Max Scherzer was on the mound that day from Missouri.
Fun.
And not many people there because it was like 35 degrees. Wasn't fun.
Yeah, okay.
And Scherzer was only going to work like 2 or 3 innings. It was a midweek game. Or it was something like that. I don't remember. I think it was a midweek game, something like that. So we go out there to watch, and he's still recovering from the forearm tightness and things like that. But we're sitting between home plate and the first base dugout. So we've got this sort of side view right at the plate. And I'm telling you, that ball got almost to home plate and then skipped faster. And it was just this optical illusion that's there. And I'm like, I've never seen that before. Because, really, even if you're sitting front row at like Kauffman, you're not that close to where you are when you go watch the Monarchs. Right. Okay. And so that was different. And many pitchers have that in Major League Baseball that are effective with their fastball. And Ragans has that. And it's not something that I think you can just sort of, hey, tweak this, teach that. I think some of it is just natural sort of arm action that can make the ball do that. So that's incredibly exciting. The slider, the curve, the different ways, the breaks, and the spin rate on those. So, again, not saying he's Max Scherzer, just saying that can be a separator just by getting strikeouts on the fastball, which he did a number of times in the game. Like Alec Marsh, one of the things that we talked about when he first came up was he threw like 60 of 93 pitches that were fastballs because he was just like fastballs, just humming them in there. Well, since then, he's getting hit around. And when he starts getting hit around, now he starts to get more fine, and he's missing, and he's walking guys and putting guys on. It's different when you're just working exclusively off that versus this fastball is also an out pitch. It's got command, and you can throw a hammer with a slider and a curve and a change that also have that movement too. So, I don't know. It's 3 starts in. I'm excited. I think the text that came in that said, agreed, it's exciting and pathetic all at once. Totally get that. Understandable. I get that sentiment because of what we were talking about of the first time somebody comes up and is just performing or gets to the Royals and is just performing, and the first time you've sort of seen them get somebody else's quote-unquote, maybe it's a lack of a better term or too harsh, cast off, and he is performing at a level that is not just, hey, these numbers don't say, like Brad Keller, like these numbers don't say this is going to continue. He's putting up some stupid numbers with ERA and WHIP, but spin rate, the other parts of his game say that this isn't going to continue. And it didn't.
For Keller, you're saying.
For Keller. Right. Ragans is different, and we'll see if he actually is different.
The predictive stuff is looking just as good as the real-time actual stuff, and also just in like a 30,000-foot view, hey, everybody who's still watching the Royals, remember why you do this. I don't think that it's doing anyone any favors to watch Ragans pitch right now and then just be looking at the sky, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Just go ahead and look at the mound. Go ahead and enjoy, look, this is still not a very good baseball team. long winning streak, shockingly long winning streak notwithstanding. But what they've been over the last, it's like 20 games or so now, would pace to a lot closer to what their season opening over-under was. We say, hey, this was not going to be a playoff team. They're not going to be a 500 team. But hey, this stretch looks something more like what we thought we might see for 162 games of this team, which is at least some bright spots, some stuff to hang your hat on, some good moments from a Grand Slam walk-off to a balk-off to a Grand Slam walk-off on the other side after the umpire said, well, let's just keep this going. I'm having fun out here. It was like a soccer ref just adding more extra time. Like, you're like, no, come on. No, let's keep it going.
Could have added a whole inning.
Extra innings? No. The Knights. I don't like the ghost runner thing. I don't like the runner on second. Let's just keep playing it out.
I want to see what this guy looks like with bases loaded.
Next run wins for everybody. Is that can you do that? I don't know, man. I'm just making it up. It's Calvin Ball behind the plate. Or at first base, I guess. But the point being, the Royals have given you some genuinely fun moments, some good games, and some performances, not just Bobby Witt anymore, but some pitching performances that you can be excited about as you look to the future, that you can enjoy in real time. I think we had about 2 months of baseball where I was not sure we were going to get any of that anymore this year.
Text comes in and says, you heard it here first. Scherzer is Reagan's. I love that. And then texted and said, only kidding. Great breakdown. Now waiting for the shoulder tightness.
No, hey, stop that.
Knock on wood.
Bad.
Look, Cliff Reagan's.
I'm going to start teaching. I'm going to start yelling at the text line like a dog.
Cliff Reagan's. I'm excited about him. I'm excited to see what happens with him.
Sorry, I'm just writing down the time where you said the phrase Reagan's is Scherzer, and I just wanted to make sure I've got that.
I was really hoping you would correct me on my Cliff Reagan's.
I didn't. That felt like a reference, and I didn't have any confidence in, so I wasn't sure I would be able to.
Carl Reagan's.
Lead you that way. I think Carl Sagan.
No, Carl Reagan. I'm excited about Carl Reagan's.
Ronald Reagan was
pumped for Clay Reagan's.
Did you say his name wrong earlier? Did I say his name wrong?
Did I say his name wrong?
I don't think so.
Is his name not Clay Reagan's?
I think it's pronounced Ragans.
Is it not? What is it then?
Like Remigio. Cole
Reagan's?
Uh-huh.
Oh. You don't correct me on my mistake. I can make get out. You're out. I made a mistake. I don't care. You called me on it. You're out of the game. Get the hell out of here.
Take the show with you by listening live on 810WHB.com, in the 810 mobile app, or by subscribing to The Zone wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, look, I'm disappointed in my performance that segment, but you won't be disappointed in your ticket selection when you shop at Tickets for Less. And my friends at Tickets for Less, they've got a great Royal special going on to celebrate that 1985 championship over St. Louis. All you got to do is use promo code 1985 to score free VIP tailgate passes and a discount on Royals Cardinals tickets on August 11th or 12th. That's right. Just enter the code 1985. That's 1985 to get a discount and free tailgate passes for Royals Cardinals. Get free food and drink plus game tickets for one great price. The Royals are playing their best ball of the season, so get your tickets today with code 1985 at Tickets for Less.
When the game goes into overtime. But the game goes into overtime. The choice to enjoy is easy. Bud Light, easy to drink, easy to enjoy. Pick up Bud Light at your local.
All right, we'll continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson with you, Josh Briscoe, and Drake. I put out a tweet. I put out a few tweets about Vic Carapazzo, the latest in the merry-go-round of who can be bad at their job as an umpire. Who's next up? Well, CB Buckner. All right, come on, CB. Who's next up? Vic Carapazzo. Victor, what do we have for him? We've got some thin skin. That's what we've got for him. So I put out a tweet of the check swing on strike one earlier in the at-bat to Urias. That was called a strike. That was called a swing. And the check swing that was called a no swing for ball four, and the fact that Urias had ducked his head and then was starting to walk back towards the dugout, and the home plate umpire pointed down to Vic Carapazzo, and as Carapazzo was getting ready to give the indication, the home plate umpire makes a fist and then immediately opens his fist because, oh, whoops. He said there was no swing. Like, he was already anticipating that's a swing. I'm going to call him out. And
everyone else in the stadium was anticipating.
Everybody. Even the Red Sox announcer said, oh, thank you. They said, oh, thank you, when they saw the replay of that. And then, of course, if somebody offers any pushback, well, then you immediately have to throw them out of the game because you haven't made a mistake in your life. There's zero chance that you would have made a mistake. There's zero chance you would have viewed the exact same swing or check swing, one as a swing and one as no swing. And also, how many times does an umpire, like that was so bad, how many times does a home plate umpire even need to check with first on a swing like that? It's like, nope, you went, you're out, there it is, innings over.
Do you think the reason that's not reviewable is because the rule is so vague?
So vague.
But I think they have to write an actual definition for the rule,
Yes.
and then it would be reviewable, right? Because it's literally a judgment call, so you can't be reviewed because of it. Is that the reasoning?
It's got to be the reasoning because it's a judgment call, because it's commit to the pitch. Well, I mean, so does that mean like his right elbow is now away from his body? Is that his hips are fully faced towards the pitcher? Is that his wrists have starting to break? Is that the bat is still not pointed at first base? So therefore, if the bat head never gets to point towards the first base umpire, therefore it's not a swing. Like, there is no specific definition of what a swing is and what a check swing when you held up is. It is really to the discretion of the first base and third base umpire. But to show you how vague and how subjective and inconsistent it is, the same at bat, 4 pitches apart, the same check swing one was called a swing, one was called not a swing. Both of them were strikes.
If it was a bunt, if this was a bunt he was offering, no one would think for a second it wasn't obvious. Honestly, the head of the bat is too far out in front of the plate for it to be a bunt. It would be a bad angle, I think, for a bunt. And that is the level of extension that he has here. I still can't believe it. I know that no one is arguing the other side of this one because it's just obviously a blown call.
10% of people at Pitching Ninja's poll of swing or no swing say that it's no swing, and 90% of people have eyes.
90% of that 10%, I think, misclicked or didn't actually see the pitch in
90%
question.
of the
They
10%?
they voted and then looked. So I'm going to say that about 5% of the entire, less than that, I'm going to say about 2% of the entire voting block actually went, no, I really think that was a good call. I watched it, I evaluated it, good call.
Yeah.
Good job, Blue.
Yeah, so, I mean, look, bad calls happen. We know that. That wouldn't even be a robot ump. That would just be still to the same discretion of the first base umpire. I don't know if you can put in a rule or whatever, specific language to make sure you know if it's a swing or a check swing. It's really difficult to be able to govern such things on the diamond, which is why we started with Cole Reagans and everything, because the Royals lost the game, whatever.
Yeah.
Wins, losses, we've talked about that. Do they matter? Don't matter. It's about, what happens between the innings.
That's right.
Cole Reagans pitching the way that he did. Bobby Witt coming through with the game-tying RBI double. Garcia coming through with the single that, brought the Royals to within 1 run. Those, to me, were the stories of the game, really. And then, of course, the ump show yet again that happened at the end of the game. And I understand, like, from the standpoint of, okay, well, you can blame the officials all you want. You can blame the umps all you want. And, the first base umpire did not cost the Royals the game. They could have easily lost in 10 innings. Sure. They also could have, Hernandez could have not walked the batter. Well, it was an intentional walk. So giving up the double and then the walk, it's an intentional walk, but then that walk. So really he gave up a double.
Yeah.
And then they decided to intentionally walk somebody. That's also a decision that the Royals made, because when you do that, well, now, you risk loading the bases, et cetera, et cetera. So, yes, Hernandez could have come back and then got an out and, blame Hernandez or whatever. I don't really blame Hernandez for the grand slam. I more credit the guy who hit the grand slam, whose name escapes me right now. I'll just go with Cliff Reagans. The guy who hit it. Because I don't blame
Reyes. Got the
Reyes, yeah. It's not Fran Mill.
No, it's not.
I don't.
It's not?
Or Jack
Pablo.
I don't blame Duran of the Twins for giving up the walk-off grand slam to Bobby Witt.
Right.
We talked about what a freaking swing to get your hands inside of that fastball and to put it where he put it. Reyes got his hands inside a 98-mile-per-hour fastball that was still working inside. It would have been just off the plate inside. Would have been ball 2. The first pitch was an attempted bunt. Reyes throws down to third, almost gets Devers, who was leaking off the bag for what could have been a safety squeeze, which wouldn't have made a whole lot of sense because there were 2 outs. So don't know why they would have attempted that, but still, it was ball 1. The second pitch, I believe, would have been ball 2, but he got his hands inside and turned on it and was able to keep it fair, barely, on a 98-mile-per-hour heavy fastball that Carlos Hernandez throws. And somehow it's like, well, Hernandez, get a guy out. That's on Hernandez. Well, it's on Hernandez for giving up the double, and it's on Hernandez for getting to a 3-2 count, but he also executed a pitch that got a swinging strike. It just was not called that. And then he throws a pitch that, how often is that thing going to be put over the wall? How often has Duran ever given up a home run like that? And there's that particular pitch by Duran. It's 4 times in the Statcast era has been hit for a home run. Bobby Witt's one of them. Hernandez did not throw 102 sinker, on the inside, part of the plate. That did not happen. But it was still an incredibly impressive swing that gets lost because of the Vic Carapazzo, abomination.
And this is, I was going to, hey, Chestnut checkers here, but there's another little part of this that I do think is kind of interesting, where the most consistent criticism of Matt Quatraro this year has not been bullpen decisions or lineups or any of that. It's that he's a little too stoic for some people in the midst of a horrendous baseball season, and which I understand on some level. I don't think that him throwing a Gatorade bucket every few games is going to do much for the clubhouse.
He doesn't need to be the Reds' David Bell, who's been thrown out of 20 games in the last year and a half.
No, I don't think he does. I don't think he needs to end the lives of some sunflower seeds too soon. I don't think that's what they need. But I do understand if you're a Royals fan and you are more frustrated in your living room than the manager appears to be. Again, you would rather have a cool, calm, collected leader than a total nut job, I think. But I do understand this idea of I hate watching this team. They keep losing this, and I'm so angry. Why is the manager never frustrated like this? And now, 2 and 3 games is the pace?
2 out of 3.
Let's again that ratio. Maybe don't finish the year out that way, Quatraro. Maybe don't keep that pace up. Although it would be hilarious. Go ahead and it's got to be a record, right? He's still got time to catch up. But to be able to see that, where fans at home are losing their minds, saying this calls bull bleep. How this is the way the Royals are going to get screwed out of this one, and then Matt Quatraro also is an extension of that, where he rightly goes, no bleep in a way. This cannot possibly be the way that we are going to load the bases up here and then see what happens next. There is something I think that can be kind of redeeming. Not that he even terribly needs it, in my opinion. But I think there can be something redeeming for a lot of the frustrated Royals fans who wanted to see something more fiery out of Matt Quatraro, that now you've seen it twice over the last 3 games in a pretty major way.
It does not make up for what I believe is an unforgivable mistake. A mistake that I will, in 20 years, if Quatraro has a statue out at Kauffman Stadium or whatever it's named downtown, hopefully still Kauffman, if he's got a statue there and he's a Hall of Fame manager, it is an unforgivable mistake by pinch hitting Zach Greinke in the fifth or sixth inning, whatever it was.
I'm glad we're talking about this.
It's unforgivable mistake.
I'm glad we're talking about it.
And that will go down. That's the first line in his resume to me. His Wikipedia page, that's the first line. Matt Quatraro, manager who pinch hit for Zach Greinke in his final year, what probably is his final year in Major League Baseball, to give him one last at bat.
He's on the on-deck circle.
In a game, in a season where the Royals won 40 games. I don't know, I'm just guessing here.
Yeah.
That's the first line. For me, it's unforgivable. I'll never be able to, I won't gain that trust back.
I
can't get.
I don't think you should. I think you should allow that. You should hold on to that and let that fester.
It's going to.
It's the only thing I really wanted. When I saw that, was that what day was that? Was that
It was a Saturday.
Saturday? So Saturday,
Or Sunday.
whatever day. I think it was Saturday, because I wasn't watching up until that point, and then I saw everything that went down with Salvi, and was hold on, Zach Greinke is on deck. So I was in there from that point on, and then I watched his inning.
It was Sunday because Fermin had the day off. He was DHing because it was day game after a night game. So it was Sunday day game after the night game. So Fermin caught Saturday. He was DHing on Sunday. Salvi was catching.
Okay.
And then they had to put Fermin in to catch from the DH because of Salvi. So let's go Sunday.
I tuned in specifically to catch what I thought was going to be an incredible new moment in Royals history. I tuned in because they needed to catch it. Someone needed to catch it. And then he went back out there. It was I think he took the first batter of the third time through the order, maybe two through. Yeah. And I knew as we were watching, I knew.
I mean, Melendez just come through with a hit, man.
That's what it is. I think it's more. I think it's more MJ Melendez's fault because, and look, the fun of watching Zach Greinke hit.
It's others before Melendez.
Everyone in front of him.
Yeah, right.
Everyone who recorded an out in that inning should be ashamed of themselves.
That's right.
Because you kept us from something incredible. I wanted the fun thing. I wanted to see Zach Greinke hit so bad. But it would have been, from a serious manager's perspective, borderline unforgivable to leave Zach Greinke in to then send him back out for either a third time through the order or just a hit and then pull him. But I would have preferred that. I wonder what Greinke said. I wonder if Quatraro asked him.
Was lobbying. You could see it in the dugout. He was lobbying to go out there, and he wasn't happy about not being able to hit. But luckily, Edward Olivares came in and made the first out.
Yes, I know. And that makes it even worse.
So thankfully, they had somebody come in and get a hit. And now
quick out too, right? Was that it the first pitch for Olivares?
I know Quatraro doesn't know what Edward Olivares is going to do. So it's not like, hey, Edward Olivares is going to make an out. All right, well, let's see what Greinke can do then. That's fine. Let's check this one out. I get that, but odds are Olivares is going to make an out.
Yeah,
so,
I desperately wanted to see Zach Greinke hit.
Yep.
And I also understand why he didn't.
Yep. I desperately want to see Chris Jones at training camp.
Oh, boy, me too.
On the field against the Detroit Lions, number 95. Brett Veach talked yesterday about a few things. We will talk about those quotes from Brett Veach as it relates to Chris Jones, the contract, Kadarius Toney, Isaiah Pacheco, and things along those lines. Adam Teicher will join us at 1 o'clock from ESPN. We'll talk with him about the Chiefs. Les Norman coming up at noon from Breaking the Norm. And Chiefs press conferences in the 11 o'clock hour. Steve Spagnuolo, Nick Bolton, Jalen Watson, and Blake Bell. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We'll talk Chris Jones' contract, the latest there from Brett Veach next.
You're in the zone with Jason Anderson on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Hello, friends. Let me tell you about Underdog Fantasy. They're hosting the biggest fantasy football tournament of all time, Best Ball Mania 4. It has $15 million in total prizes, with $3 million going to first place. Would you like to win? Well, I can tell you how to play. You got to take care of the winning part on your own, but I can also get you a good deal. I've really enjoyed Underdog Fantasy. In fact, as I've been looking ahead to my season-long fantasy drafts, I'm not doing mock drafts on other sites anymore. I'm just throwing down a couple of bucks, hopping into an Underdog Fantasy draft, and going through that, treating it like, the pre-draft process of getting ready for the fantasy season. But I don't want to have to just chuck all that in the garbage. I really enjoy the drafts. I'd rather build a real team. But I certainly cannot, at this point in my life, have 15 fantasy teams that I'm doing waiver claims and all of that for every single week. That's not an option. Here is the option. Here's how Underdog Fantasy works in the Best Ball format. You're going to like it because you like fantasy football. You're going to love Best Ball. It's a live snake draft. No waivers, no trades, no worrying about the injuries or the week-to-week management. You draft your team, and then you're done. Underdog sets the best lineup for you each week of the season. You can set it and forget it until it's time to collect your cash. winner of last year's Best Ball Mania, drafted their team in July. We are now well into August, and it's time to make sure you are getting your teams selected. There's real value to be found if you've got some preseason sleepers before we see everybody hitting the field. This is the time that I think you can get some of that value. And if you're going to, try to sneak Sky Moore onto your team, I'd stop waiting, and I'd go ahead and hop into Underdog Fantasy right now. So what are you waiting for? Sign up on UnderdogFantasy.com or via the App Store with promo code Briscoe. That's promo code BRISCO. And Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code Briscoe, BRISCO. Must be 18 or over and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org.
Your Kansas City Symphony presents Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. Harry's last year at Hogwarts is here, part of the epic...
All right, we continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. We'll head to St. Joe in the 11 o'clock hour. We'll hear from Steve Spagnuolo, Nick Bolton, Jalen Watson, and Blake Bell. Brett Veach talking yesterday and quotes that he gave about Chris Jones, the contract, where is it at right now? Read some of the quotes. He's a great player, wants a big contract, deserves a big contract, and I don't think there's any surprises in that regard. There's just some hurdles we have to work through in regards to how we can keep this thing going for the short and long term. But we've never wavered on this is a guy that we want to exhaust all of our efforts to get done because that's how much we think of him. You have to keep in mind that when we did make that move with Tyreek, one of the determining factors was because there was an expected Chris Jones deal. And so to do Tyreek, there was a concern of would we be able to do Chris? And so that was a moment of time, and it was before the draft that we hit the reset button, and we're like, It's really hard to trade a player the magnitude of Tyreek Hill, but we're following that up with someone just as significant and on the defensive side. He goes on and talks about, there's not going to be a trade or anything. He says, I think for all parties, the best resolution would be for him to end his career as a Chief, get that financial security, and for us to do what we had set out to do, and that's to work through the last offseason with this offseason in mind to get some young guys, which we did that, and then focus on this year getting Chris done. Hopefully we get this resolved, but we have no intentions of making a trade. The dialogue described as extensive, and he says, quote, you reach this point where I think both parties want to just kind of take a deep breath and reset a little bit. And then the talks become less frequent. But at the same time, the start of the season is September 7th. So by nature, they're going to have to heat up again. And like I said, that's why we're still optimistic. Woo, there's a lot there.
There sure is.
There's a lot there. I kind of want to take it in reverse order because he deserves a big contract. They want to give him a big contract. Big is a relative term. Nobody knows exactly specifically what the Chiefs are willing to offer and exactly specifically what Chris Jones wants outside of, he wants $30 million per year. Okay, cool. $5 million guaranteed. All right, that's dumb. Okay, so that's not going to be the case.
That's vagaries. We don't really know what that means.
Yes, so we don't really know the particulars or what the hang-up is, where they are far apart on. So they want him. Chris Jones wants to be there. Not looking at trade, all of that stuff. Two things stand out. The Tyreek Hill part and then the timing of it part.
Those are the two things that I thought stood out.
No way.
It really is.
No way.
Honest to goodness.
It's interesting him describing the conversations. Let's start with that before we get into Tyreek Hill and one leading to the other. The timing of the conversations. In June at the ring ceremony, we've got plenty of time. Camp isn't for another month, so we'll probably get this thing done. These things usually get done before camp or that first week of camp. We find out that they were surprised that he did not show up. Those are the reports that he wasn't there. But the expectation was, hey, as a deadline gets here, we can be at, I'm just using vague numbers here, we can be at 26, he's at 30. But as deadline approaches, we're going to inch closer and closer and closer and closer, and then we'll get something done. But when he says, you reach this point where I think both parties want to just kind of take a deep breath and reset a little bit. Because that deadline came and went, and nobody was really budging, and they didn't think the progress was going to be made, and it probably got to the point where both sides were sort of banging their head against the wall and saying, no, we're wanting this, no, we're wanting that, okay, we're not making progress. All right, let's reset. Let's reset. We'll get back and talks will heat up. And then he says, the start of the season is September 7th, so by nature, they're going to have to heat up again. So the first deadline was training camp. What's the second deadline to, quote, heat up again when you think you can get closer to making an agreement?
And there is an imperative part here. If you have to heat it up again, what's the temperature right now?
Yep, it means they're not really talking.
It's not hot enough. And that to me even extends beyond just, hey, where are the deadlines? Where are the signposts? Where are you worried and where are you saying, hey, you know what, that's all right. Yeah, we'll take some space. We'll talk, have a good weekend. We'll talk to you on Monday or we'll talk to you in a week. I don't know what the big voids of time here have been. But the most ominous sounding part of this to me is they're gonna have to heat up again, I add parenthetically, because they're cold right now. And like I said, that's why we're still optimistic. As in their optimism has been tested to this point.
But we're still there.
Still there. And I think that it just practically, it's the only way to resolve this still. But this didn't make me feel any better, I'll tell you that.
No, it did not. And it did not make me feel like there was a resolution right around the corner. I don't know what deadline the Katz brothers and Chris Jones have in their mind when they feel like this needs to get done and Chris Jones needs to get into camp. Maybe that's by the second preseason game. Maybe that's when they break camp and leave St. Joe, August 17th. Maybe that's just simply September 7th. That they're looking at because they don't want him losing game checks. But it's not August 8th. or it seems even August 9th. We'll talk some more about this, the Tyreek Hill part of it, the plans, all of it sort of working together.
Proper diagnosis and treatment of erectile dysfunction requires good medical practitioners and the right medical solution for your specific condition, because you...
Better value. Go to GuaranteedFoods.com.
All right, we continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson with you, Josh Briscoe, Drake. We'll talk with Les Norman at noon. We'll talk with Adam Teicher at 1 o'clock. We'll hear from the Kansas City Chiefs, Steve Spagnuolo, Nick Bolton, Jalen Watson, and Blake Bell. Talking some Chris Jones and some Brett Veach comments about his contract, and some that sound ominous in terms of where they are currently, not necessarily ominous in that they're not going to get something done and this is not going to get resolved and it's going to be worst case scenario and Chris Jones is going to be on a different team. I am still not moving any closer to that than I was before, even with this delay in getting the contract done. I'll move closer to that when it's like, September 7th. The Chiefs are lining up against the Lions, and Chris Jones is still holding out, and he's watching on TV somewhere.
What's your real panic day? Like, when would you go, oh, yikes, this is maybe not happening?
Let's see, the 13th, 20th, 25th, is that the final preseason game?
Yeah.
So I think that Thursday night, the 25th, isn't that
That's Friday, so it might be the 24th.
So the 24th, whatever that Thursday night, whatever the last preseason game for the Chiefs, that would be my. All right, this is a panic.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's an issue right now.
Yeah,
especially hearing this from Brett Veach. I think it becomes more and more of a brighter red light as the preseason games come and go.
It's just been turning up a little bit in brightness.
Right, and as the heat
Yes.
as well. And if it gets to that third preseason game and then day after, and they have already been back in Kansas City for a week, so the whole, he just doesn't want to go St. Joe, that's expired.
Then it's rotisserie chicken situations where,
That's
it's
right.
warm under here.
That's exactly right. Then it would be, all right, this is real. September 7th would be, are they going to trade him?
I think,
still don't think it gets there.
Yeah.
Which is why I haven't moved any closer to this is going to end up in a trade than where I was at the beginning, which is it's not going to.
I think that date makes sense. I'm just trying to think of what my answer to that question would have been a month ago, and I think it would have been Friday, this upcoming Friday, maybe Sunday. But I could not possibly care less if he doesn't play in the preseason. But I was pretty sure we'd see him on street clothes on the sideline, and I don't know that we're going to now. I think we mentioned this yesterday. There's the off day Thursday. I don't know if that makes it more or less likely that more discussions get done, but it would make a lot of sense to me if that was hey guys, we got to stop dragging our feet here just to make sure you're ready for the season. But I don't know who's willing to blink first.
Again, when he says that you reach the point where I think both parties want to kind of take a deep breath and reset a little bit. And then the talks become less frequent. But at the same time, the start of the season is September 7th. So by nature, they're going to have to heat up again. And like I said, that's why we're still optimistic. They are going to have to heat up again. Not they are heating up again. They are going to have to heat up again. So this is what seems to be just a stalemate. You've gone to your respective corners, and that's where you're staying for the time being, and there's no end in sight, or at least there's no date that you feel like the light is at the end of the tunnel, and it's getting bigger and bigger. It's just every day that passes right now, the light is staying the exact same size. It's staying the same distance away, even though there is a deadline of at least September 7th, which is the date that Brett Veach mentions. I don't think that's the date they're really looking at as a deadline. It's just, do the Chiefs know what date the Katz brothers have had as a deadline and Chris Jones have had as a deadline of, all right, we've held out long enough. This is all we're going to get. Let's do it. But there's a caveat to this that I still want to address and talk about, and we'll maybe get into this more with Adam Teicher. If Chris Jones holds out, and then gets his money, is that the precedent the Chiefs want to set for what could be other players doing that? Because they haven't really had to deal with that, this regime of holding out. Okay, we're giving in. Here's your money. It paid off for you.
Here's my little smoke bomb to let people worry about before we get to St. Joe here.
Oh, okay.
Just a little different slant on that. Another way we can all be stressed about this.
Yes, stress.
If we're here on August 8th, why would you think it'll be terribly different by September 7th? And if September 7th comes around, and if these quotes here from Brett Veach are all, hey, we love Chris Jones, he deserves a lot of money, we'd love to get this done, we'll see you September 7th. If September 7th comes around, I think Chris Jones has to play regular season football for the Kansas City Chiefs. And if he takes the field on September 7th without a new deal, it will be his last season in Kansas City, period. There's no world in which they do this again next offseason.
Be tough.
They could try franchise tagging him next offseason and then make that pre-draft trade That might be the best timeline purely for the Chiefs from the cutthroat, let's get in and out standpoint if you really think he's going to fall off a cliff. I still don't. I'd still give him this long-term deal. But I'm a little bit worried that we're going to look back on some of this as groundwork from both sides, like we now do when we go back to the way that they were talking a month ago and go, oh, man, this seems like it may have been a surprise. I think the Chiefs at this point at least have to have realistic options for pretty much any outcome here. And I say that as someone who is permanently living on the pay Chris Jones side of the street.
He also says, Brett Veach, sometimes these things take some time. So we'll just continue to press away and work through that and hopefully make some movement here. We went into this and we're having these ongoing dialogues. Our intent and desire has always been to get Chris Jones secured for the foreseeable future, and we're going to press on with that mindset. Now, I will say, as Chris Jones has held out, if it gets to the point to where the Chiefs just simply give in and maybe there's an Andy Reid step, although, Veach takes care of all of that. If there's an Andy Reid stepping in and going, hey, Brett, get it done. We're playing football. Let's get it done. Or if there's an Andy Reid of, hey, Chris Jones, get it done, dude. You're under contract. I can contact you. This isn't where, you're suspended or anything. I can still reach out if I need to. What's the deal? What's the hang up?
Yeah.
What's keeping you from being here with your teammates to try to win another Super Bowl? Let's get this thing done, okay? And if it's your agents or whatever, they work for you. So let's get this thing done. Let's figure it out. Get in here. If it comes to a point to where the Chiefs just simply give in, and then it's like, well, Chris Jones won. He held out and he showed that you can hold out against the Chiefs and you can get your money. Is that a precedent they want to set? The flip side to that would be how many players are the Chris Jones so invaluable that the Chiefs wouldn't go, oh, okay, we'll just trade you.
Three.
That's
Three.
right.
It's just
That's
three.
right. Maybe another one or two could develop over time. But right now, there's three.
Is there somebody else down the line? I don't. If they were willing to move Tyreek Hill when it got to that point, the cutoff is above Tyreek Hill and below Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and Chris Jones. And Travis Kelce's not looking for a 5-year guaranteed deal.
And if Chris Jones was an offensive player, he might be getting traded.
Yeah,
but
true.
Specifically, Brett Veach mentioned, and he's on defense.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Defensively, it's just Chris Jones, and then next offseason they're going to give Nick Bolton $250 million guaranteed, and it's going to rival the Mahomes deal.
Sounds like it's worth it to me. I mean, why wouldn't you do that? The guy had a touchdown in the Super Bowl. So how many other defensive players had a touchdown in the Super Bowl?
I don't think
Chiefs?
Chris Jones did.
He did not.
Well.
Did he even get a sack? I mean, he can't even get sacks in the playoffs. I mean,
Damn
good
it.
night. All right, we'll take a timeout. We'll come back on the other side. We will head up to St. Joe here from Steve Spagnuolo, Nick Bolton, and that guy, Jalen Watson, and Blake Bell. More Zone next.
Want to see more of The Zone? Watch the show live on the Sports Radio 810 WHB Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch.
All right, Jason Anderson here from my friends over at Guaranteed Foods. It's been over a month now, and we could not be happier with our experience with Guaranteed Foods. From the ease of picking out our food, the over 600 restaurant-quality gourmet products, including 100% all-natural meats, fruits, and vegetables, to the convenience of preparing the food, the lunches, especially dinner time, to the time saved, the time we get back as a family. It's awesome, and it's also the quality and customer service that sets Guaranteed Foods apart. Last night, we had some teriyaki hoisin, is that what it is? Hoisin? Beef stir fry. Total of 8 minutes to make it. Grab the food, rice, stir fry vegetables, beef from the Guaranteed Foods heavy-duty commercial food service center that they put in our home. Put it on the skillet. From frozen, boom, start to finish eating 18 minutes. 18 minutes. Healthy options that fast, restaurant quality that fast. It is so different than anything we've ever experienced. Give Guaranteed Foods a call, 913-888-5000 or guaranteedfoods.com, and see the difference they can make in your life for your family. And we do that and have it taste great because the food is blast frozen. It locks in the product's flavors and protects the juices. So when we serve the meal, again, from frozen, it retains the great taste. It's not dried out and processed, only in a federally inspected plant. The monthly investment is more than worth it, and in fact, we are saving money on our grocery and food bill. The ease of ordering is great. Quick customer service Tom Williams and his team provide. In fact, we had our meal last night because Jennifer Bedford sent us a recipe randomly over the weekend that her family had just recently prepared. How about that? That's hey, we know you have these ingredients. This is what we are sending you. So it's Guaranteed Foods, 913-888-5000 or GuaranteedFoods.com. Guaranteed Foods, official sponsor of Family Mealtime since 1958.
Does your knee pain keep getting worse? How about that pain in your shoulder or hip or back? Don't let them tell you steroids and surgery are the only option. Take my advice now and call QC Kinetics. This is Stephen St. John. QC Kinetics can make that pain go away with all natural advances.
where they're at. None of that. I mean, the guys we know about, certainly, I mean, Coach Reed typically doesn't have them out there too long, but I'm really, I mean, I think I've probably said this every first preseason game. I'm particularly more interested in finding out where we are as a tackling group, you know, where we are at eliminating big plays. I mean, you got to do that stuff first before you even think about being any good.
Two-part question. One, you talk about how complex your defense is. One, what do you think about the rookies and the new players coming in, learning where they at in their growth progression? But then also, what are your expectations for year two for the rookies from last year, along with Justin Reed, and you know where they are comfortably in?
Yeah, I mean the expectation. The second part first. The expectation for the guys that have been here is that they would take this thing up a notch and wouldn't make those same mistakes that they made last year at this time. Now, for the most part, that has happened. But there have been some guys where focus wasn't great, and I look at them and say, you know, you made that same mistake last year. You shouldn't be making that now. So that's that group. For the most part, they've been pretty good. The young guys, I think, have done a really good job. There's been guys that have stepped up. You've seen them out here. We're moving Chamari around a little bit. Echo's playing a little bit. A lot of those young guys are getting the volume for them is getting huge now. It's about to get really cut way down because when we play this game, they'll have, you know, that much of a game plan going in, and we'll just find out what they can do. But, you know, the mental part of it, we always want to challenge them here. And then in these preseason games to find out what they can do physically, we usually take some of that off of them. Otherwise, we're not going to know where they are athletically in this particular setting.
What exactly are you going to be looking for? What are you going to be looking for in these games that you're going to be looking for from these players?
In all of them?
Well, yeah, just, you know, the new players. You only got 3 games.
I'm going to go back to what I just said. To me, the first thing I'll talk about Saturday night is tackling. That's the first thing we'll talk about. I might spend the whole 30-minute meeting on it. I feel like if we don't do that or come away thinking that we're a decent tackling team, I mean, we're going to be back here, you know, going back to ground zero. So that's going to be the first thing. The mental part of it will be important, but there won't be that much on them. I just want to see if they'll go play. Let's see if they can do, the young guys now, let's see if we can do they can do the things that we saw them do when they were playing in college.
You had Echo with the first team the other day for a couple days.
A little bit that's because of the guys that we have out. Yeah, listen, the one thing I like about Echo is he responds to really aggressive coaching. There's been a couple of things that he's had to, and he has. I mean, I love working with him. I mean, he's so receptive to everything, and he's given everything he's got. He just needs to learn how to be a pro playing in the secondary.
What mentioned the second-year guys and needing to see them take a step forward and put the mistakes behind them? It looked like Nazi was doing that.
Yeah.
Specifically with Joshua and Jalen, how have they been handled?
It's at times it's up and down, but they're light years ahead of where they were last year. So that part's good. And you know, in the midst of the middle of training camp, everybody has an off play here or there, but the expectations for them are so much higher now than they were a year ago, and then we try to keep that expectation up high.
Do you sense you're ready to face somebody different than the same old guys in training camp?
I'll bet if you asked every one of them, they'd probably say, yeah, it's time to hit somebody else. I mean, and then the other thing is that we can't do, you know, quote-unquote real live football here. We don't, which is very smart to do. We want to keep everybody healthy. But if these guys are really into the game of football, especially defensive football, they should want that part of it, right?
What's your question of edge rushers right now?
Yeah, I mean, we've had, you know, Charles has been dinged a little bit. Mike's been dinged. You know, so we probably don't have the foundation of reps for those guys right now. But George has had I look at the play count every day. Terry gives it to me, and his play count's way up. So he's rolling along real good. Malik's got a lot of reps in there. Josh has. And it's been good for those two guys because in the last couple of years they've been here, that hadn't been the case. But we'll see what they do in the game setting.
Felix, he's going to probably get to work in here. Coach talked about him yesterday. He's getting a little bit more comfortable. Looks like he's letting it loose a little bit. Just what are your thoughts about what he's done for you out here and also in the media?
Yeah, you hit it right on the nose because he does look a lot more comfortable. Volume's heavy for him right now. His pitch count has gone up in the last week. A, because of guys that have been nicked up, but B, because he's kind of earned it. And he's coming along and missed all that time we talked about in OTAs. But I think he's making up for it now, and hopefully he'll do that. Good? All right.
All right, there's Steve Spagnuolo talking about what's been going on with the defense. We'll hear from Nick Bolton. We'll hear from Jalen Watson and also Blake Bell there. So a number of things to take away from that. Tackling. We'll hear from Blake Bell coming up next. I believe he's there right now.
Here and work against teammates and stuff, but I think most of the guys would say the same thing. We're kind of ready to hit somebody else.
One of the things that Coach Staggs talked about was trying to see if his guys can tackle. Training camp's over now. You guys don't get tackled out there. I guess this is good to not tackle out here, but what's it going to feel like for you to get tackled in the game too? That's that whole side.
Yeah, I think it's different. Here you got guys coming up and trying to thud you and hitting you up high. A lot of times in the games, you got those safeties coming, trying to get your ankles and knees for some of those bigger guys. So, but it's fine. You get good workout here still too. Sometimes in short yardage goal line, we go live. Not that that's like really crazy tackling, but it's still going live. But yeah, I think we'll be excited to get out there and especially the defense, hit some dudes.
Like, does your role change? Does it seem as a fullback? Does your role change at all?
Not really. There might be some stuff where we move around a little bit, but Coach Mel and offensive staff doing a great job of kind of moving all of us around a little bit. Noah, you see him back there doing stuff, doing a great job, and we got a great room, so all the guys can do everything.
You mentioned guys are going to chop at you as we're going out there, and it seems like everybody tries to do that to Travis. Do you kind of get why, sometimes Travis is like, okay, enough's enough?
Yeah, I think so. After a while, you got guys coming, and listen, I get it. The defensive staff is preaching, get the ball out. And it's training camp, you get in the dog days a little bit, and the heat's going, and, someone catches you right in the rib, you might get a little feisty. So I'm sure that's what happened, but I know he's talked to the guys, and it is what it is.
Last year, you got injured in the preseason and lost a lot of the year. How much better are you feeling now? How excited are you to be healthy at this time of year?
I'm feeling good. I really am. Just trying to get back this offseason, trying to stretch and keep my body loose a little bit. But yeah, I'm feeling good. It's such a freak injury, and the doctors did a great job last year getting me fixed up, and the trainers did a great job too as well. So I'm feeling great, ready to roll.
How frustrating was that process last year, where the team's doing so well and you're pushing to get back, and you're able to watch that?
Yeah, it was hard, but that was my goal each and every day, is trying to get better and try to stay focused, because some of those days you come in and you're like, man, what am I doing? I'm not playing. But that's how those injuries work, man. You just gotta keep your head down and keep fighting and work to get back on the field.
Like the offense, we're watching Patrick work on his behind the back kind of stuff. Are there things we're going to see in this offense this year? Is it evolving to even you might call them challenging, but do you see more things coming out of this offense that could surprise people?
Yeah, always. I think that's what's great about the offensive staff. They're always thinking. You see the ring around the rosy deal and plays like that. That's why they do such a great job. And then all of a sudden they give it to us, and Pat does a great job of just making everything fun in the huddle and doing these type of plays. So you never know. We'll see.
How hard is it to catch it behind the back pass?
You never know where 15's throwing it, so you got to be ready at all times.
How many tight ends could be on the field at one time for you all this year?
Well, I always say, I don't know how many we got. 6. I'd like all 6 of us if we could, but I know we got 13 personnel, we got 14 personnel, so but if you ask any of us tight ends, we want as many as we can on the field all the times.
All right, there's Blake Bell. Hopefully stays healthy throughout the preseason. Unlike a year ago, that was unfortunate and had to battle back throughout the year, so hopefully nothing like that happens really with anybody. Nick Bolton up right now.
Yes, ma'am, man. It's been long overdue. We've been a couple third periods, but nothing like the live action and live tackling. So I was thinking as a defense, we're kind of excited for that one for sure.
Sorry, what do you want to get out of Sunday's game?
Yeah, man, I think we come in with a lot of it. Tackling for one, stopping the run. Run game hasn't really been a huge thing in this training camp. We're more pass-oriented, so again, opportunity to see how we prepare against the run. Good D linemen, inside blocks, linebackers, stacking shit, getting off the blocks, and tackling on the perimeter. I kind of feel like those kind of big things, especially week 1 through 5, as a defense, kind of things we kind of be on top of to help us out.
You expecting to play Sunday? Or?
No, we haven't talked about playing time. Again, many times I'm allowed to go out there, communicate, get people to the line, and just have fun and play football again.
Hey, how would you compare how the defense has done in this training camp compared to last training camp?
Yeah, I feel like this training camp for sure. I think everybody's a little bit older in the scheme-wise. Jay Reed, second-year guy. I'm going in my 3rd year. Willie's 4th year. Snead's 4th year. So the more communication part We left off for coming in from last year to this year is night and day. Everybody's communicating. Everybody feels more comfortable. We can talk to each other, give people hand signals, and kind of know what each other's thinking. And that kind of helps us out a lot. So we can keep doing that, keep building on that. I feel like we'll be in a good position.
Today where it looks like you drew Kelsey in coverage during the live period. Just how difficult is it to defend against Travis?
Yeah, man, the greatest in the game. We got opportunity to go against him at 15 every single day. It makes you better. So many opportunities as I can. Out in coverage, me, Willie, Drew, Leo. Anytime we can line up versus Trav and the rest of the tight ends and Pat throwing the ball, and those will help us out down the long run. So again, we know he's greatest in the game, man. He's earned that recognition.
You obviously know how the guys who've been around here for a while can tackle. For these rookies, you really never seen them tackle anyone, right? How excited are you to see some of those guys to see what they can do on that end of the game?
Oh yeah, I'm excited for sure. We got a lot of young rookies that came in, learned the scheme, and kind of helped themselves get the scheme part down. They can just learn about strictly learn about playing football and just hitting, tackling, making plays out in space, and trying to get back to where they were. I tell all the rookies that the goal is try to mentally get to the part where you can feel like you're back in college again. Or you just go out there and line up, you get a call, you just go out there and just play. So we get those guys to that point, I know we'd be good and set up for the rest of the season.
Spags had mentioned, we were talking about Brian Cook and how he's coming along. He's going to play a lot more this year.
Sure.
What's your connection with him been like, with him back there behind you, kind of quarterback in that department?
Yeah, man. B. Cook, man, is a vocal guy. I mentioned earlier that he said something that he might be completely wrong, but it makes you believe he's 100% right. But more times than not, he's 100% right. So, getting guys lined up and communicating, man, and make sure everybody's on the same page. And if he sees something, he can help me out. Vice versa, man. He communicates that out loud, and just open communication between everybody on the football field. So I know having him is making us a great football team.
Nick, how's the linebacker room coming together, just considering you guys do different things well, and you guys are interchanging some of the personnel? Just how do you feel about the room as a whole?
Yeah, man, I feel like we're growing together, trying to figure out what each other does the best. How do we make each other better? I feel like that takes time, but I feel like we're in a great spot. We know what each guy brings to the table, and we're just trying to maximize that as much as we can. And we see how the season takes us and see how different packages and stuff works out down the line. But for right now, again, we were just worried about trying to get our run fits down, pass zone coverages, and just coming together as a unit.
Nick, Travis has kind of shown that he's not always happy with being defended. As defenders, does that just help build up a young team that no matter who you're facing, you got to do your job, you got to get the ball away, that kind of thing when you're playing guys like this?
Yeah, man. Travis is a little older guy, man, so he's a little older, man. So a couple little hits at the bottom of the whistle, man, probably aggravates a little bit. But again, we're gonna be a defense, take the ball away, and just be aggressive mindset on defense. And I think that's how you do anything, that's how you do everything. And so again, those guys attacking the football, man, so we want to preach and get the ball back to offense as many times as possible. Right now, I understand he might not like it now, but we're getting the ball back in the regular season, man. I know he'll love it. So we're gonna keep at it.
Nick, you sense such different confidence with this group this year out here against when it's a really good offense?
Yeah, I think kind of a testament to our coaches, how much time people are putting in the offseason. Granted, we played at the end of February, so our downtime wasn't as much as it was the year before. So guys kind of picking up where we left off and just understanding the communication, what we're trying to do in the grand scheme of things. I kind of think that's kind of helped us propel ourselves to where we are right now. And then going against our offense, you know what they bring to the table, the best in the league at what they do. So we can go out there every single day and compete, make everything contested. Even if they do catch the ball, make it contested, and that'll help us down the road.
Last one. Nick, you set some high goals for the season. You want to be a top 10 defense. Just what do you got to see out of the guys in the first preseason game to know you're kind of on the right track to getting there? Yeah, man, I just get a line, assignment-wise communication, and just tackling, and get the ball back to the offense, create turnovers. And we can do those 4 things, 5 things. I think we'll be pretty good. All right, thanks.
All right, there's Nick Bolton. We will hear from Jaylen Watson coming up here in just a little bit. I liked what Nick Bolton said there about trying to get the ball out there in camp. Yeah, he may not like it right now because we're trying to get the ball back and get a turnover. Come the regular season, we get the ball back to the offense. They'll love it, which is absolutely true. Yes, you don't like it now. We're trying to get the ball back. Regular season, when we knock that ball out and get it back, you'll be fine with it. And that's part of what's going on in training camp, things like that. So, yeah, I like that from Nick Bolton and talking about the communication being night and day. Here's Jaylen Watson.
More comfortable do you feel standing here than like 1 year ago today?
Everything just slows down in the process. Just seems a lot slower than it did last year. Just everything happening so fast and the offense moving so fast. Now that I know what I'm doing and the guys I'm playing next, so I can move more fast and be more comfortable.
Spags says that the one thing he really looks for second-year guys is being able to put back from behind the mistakes they made as rookies and move forward. How do you feel you're doing with that as far as progressing?
I just try to stay consistent. I think that's what Coach Spags looks for. Who can he trust on the field? And that's what I try to do when we practice. I try to show that the coaches can trust me to be in the right spots in the right places, and my teammates can too.
There's a lot of good things to say about Brian Cook and his leadership back there. What have you seen as far as growth from him in particular?
Yeah, Brian's always been a person that has always been in the playbook, knows what he's doing back there. He stayed loud and confident last year behind Juan as well, so we knew if he went down, Cook would be the next man ready. And he's just continuing to do that this year. He's been a leader, putting us in the right positions, and he's doing a great job.
This first preseason game, actually get the chance to make a little more contact and stuff. How much are you looking forward to facing other faces? I'm
very excited. Training camp, we kind of get tired of each other. We've been here so long, get tired of playing the same players, and you get to play another opponent, so that's always fun. We get to tackle, hit a little bit, get our pads worn back up, so it should be a great time.
Anything else? All right.
Thank you, guys.
All right, there's Jalen Watson. Quick one from Jalen Watson and Nick Bolton, Blake Bell, and Steve Spagnuolo there in St. Joe as press conference coverage, training camp coverage presented by Barstool Sportsbook at Hollywood Casino, Bud Light, Green Grass Cattle Company, and Premier Volvo Cars of Overland Park. We will take a timeout. We'll come back. We'll continue rolling. We'll get into what we heard from Spags and Blake Bell and Nick Bolton and Jalen Watson, and I'll clear my throat, and then we'll also hear from a couple of clips we didn't play yesterday that I wanted to get into about that Justin Reed said over the weekend that relates to what we heard from Steve Spagnuolo, Nick Bolton, and Jalen Watson. We'll do that as we continue rolling. Les Norman coming up at noon. Adam Teicher, 1 o'clock. More Zone next.
Want to see more of The Zone? Watch the show live on the Sports Radio 810 WHB Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch.
Did you see they're making a new Willy Wonka movie, like origin story, Timothée Chalamet? The trailer didn't do much for me personally. Jason heard about it. Well, Jason, here's the thing, everybody. Here's why I'm mentioning Willy Wonka. I don't really care about this remake. I don't really need another retelling of the gritty origin story of Wonka. But what I do like is the feeling of walking into Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, which is what it feels like for me every time I walk into a Green Light dispensary. They got 4 KC area locations, one at 135th and State Line, one on Bannister, in Independence, and in Harrisonville. They've been voted Missouri's best dispensary numerous times by the people of Missouri, and if you've heard me talk about them once, you've heard me say that, but I mention it every time because, well, it matters. You want to know where you're getting your marijuana from. You want to know the people who are selling it to you. You want to know what the best version of it may be for you. You're not just going in, grabbing something off a shelf, scanning it, and heading out of there. I mean, if you want to order online, you can certainly do that, and they make it super easy when you know what you're looking for. But I assume that some people, within the sound of my voice right now, maybe have not begun that cannabis journey. Maybe you've been interested but haven't taken that first step. Take that first step at Greenlight Dispensary because they have the knowledgeable and careful bud tenders, like they care for you behind the counter. You can ask them whatever questions you want. You can say, hey, this is the product that I'm interested in, or this is the effect I'm looking for. Here's my experience or lack thereof. They'll take all of that information and help you decide what next steps will be right for you. I really appreciate the people at Greenlight Dispensary. You will as well. You can also visit them online and order online if you'd like at greenlightdispensary.com. That's Greenlight Dispensary. Missouri's best. They've got the awards to show for it, and you can check them out online at greenlightdispensary.com.
Looking for that perfect gift for that hard to shop for?
We'll hear from Les Norman coming up at noon. Talk a little Royals baseball with him. 1 o'clock, Adam Teicher from ESPN. Get back into some Chiefs football. 913-912-4810. Chiefs press conferences with Steve Spagnuolo, Nick Bolton, Jalen Watson, and Blake Bell. Our coverage of training camp presented by Barstool Sportsbook at Hollywood Casino, Bud Light, Greengrass Cattle Company, and Premier Volvo Cars of Overland Park. Let's talk about a few things that we heard. Mainly just a few things that we were able to hear from the players there. Tackling. Steve Spagnuolo, it's about tackling. Who do you want to see? All the young guys, same category. Just want to see that. But I want to find out where we are at tackling. The first thing I will talk about after the game will be about tackling. Communication, guys in the right spot, whatever. Tackling. Because if we can't do that, we head back to ground zero. The issue is, like, if you're not good at tackling on Sunday, you can't really practice it again until next Saturday,
right.
Until a week later, because you're not bringing the guys to the ground. We heard the term thud.
Yeah, a couple times.
A thud hit, which, thinking back to now when Kelsey and Brian Cook got into a little scuffle as after the play, Kelsey had hit the ground, came back up, and then Brian Cook swiped the ball away. We had mentioned that Jalen Watson kind of gave him a hit to the chest there. Well, that's what they're being taught then. That's a thud hit. So Blake Bell talked about a thud hit. Nick Bolton talked about thud hits. You can't wrap up. You can't bring them down. But the offense needs to get used to being hit with the ball in their hands. Right when they catch it, get hit, hold on to the ball. Defense needs to get used to making contact and hitting. Obviously, more arms will be involved coming up later on when you actually play games. But the thud hits that are there, as Nick Bolton and Blake Bell talked about. So tackling. It's what we'll be watching on Sunday to see what Steve Spagnuolo was watching, because 2 years ago this team sucked at tackling, and they addressed that in the offseason, and they were pretty good at tackling last year.
I think a lot of it ends up being about getting into position to be there to make the tackle, right? I mean, if you have guys who were great tacklers 5 years ago, but their athleticism starts to go, the issue isn't that they have forgotten how to do it. The issue is they didn't get there in time.
Or there are business decisions.
Well, that's also fair. Which, speaking of, I made one of the interesting things about this idea that, because they both said it, I imagine that the thud hit is a term they're using there as a coaching point, whatever. Like, which it makes you immediately know what they're saying.
Yeah.
Like, oh, a thud hit. Oh yeah, sure. I'll just thud him. Shoulder pop. You know the sound it'll make. It's gonna sound like a thud, and it's a perfect onomatopoeia. But the worst tackles in football are when a cornerback tries to thud a guy and gets thudded. And then you see another 5 or 6 yards after the catch. So whenever you can't wrap up and actually go through all those reps in real time, this is a lot of times when coaches are like, I just want to see the fundamentals. I go, okay, fine. But can you at least say what you want to see Echo Boydo do? But really, and I pulled his name out of a hat just there, but really the biggest question for him is, hey man, we actually do want to see you tackle somebody, because you're not exactly built like a linebacker out there. So this idea that will be the first kind of litmus test for how this team can tackle just in the preseason. You're not going to go vanilla defense on your tackling. You will schematically. You will be playing backups, not your starters for 4 quarters. But every single person on the field can and will be expected to tackle well. It's super basic, but I actually do think it's kind of important, because it's going to be the first time a lot of these guys have had a full padded tackle since the Super Bowl.
Couple things. Steve Spagnuolo brought up, without being asked first, about Echo Boydo.
He did.
He was talking about young guys, and he says Shamari's moving around a little bit because he was asked Najee Johnson, things like that. But Shamari's moving around a little bit, Shamari Connor. And then he said Echo playing a bit. The volume is getting there for him. And so we'll see what ultimately, he said what he's got to learn to be a pro. That he responds to aggressive coaching, which is good. So they're coaching him pretty aggressively.
That's the other thing that I think comes through there, yeah.
And he's responding to it, receptive to it. He just got to learn to be a pro, and every single rookie has to learn to be a pro. But he talked about Jalen Watson and Joshua Williams, or Joshua Watson, Jalen Williams. They were interchangeable last year.
Kind of were.
And this is an interesting dynamic for year 2 for these guys. We've heard everybody talking about year 2, light and day, or night and day, light years ahead. It's the communication has just been amazing. He said with their camp so far, they've been up and down, but they're light years ahead of where they were a year ago. And he said, but expectations are higher. That's going to be an interesting dynamic this year because Jalen Watson and Joshua Williams were judged as a 4th rounder from an HBCU and a 7th round cornerback in Watson. That's what they were judged by in stepping in, knowing you're going to take some lumps with rookies, and you just have to accept it because this is the spot you're in with expensive players at the high end like the Chiefs have. You've got to take your medicine from time to time, and it's not going to be perfect. They are no longer going to be judged by, it's just a 4th rounder and a 7th rounder stepping in. Charvarius Ward, when he stepped in for Orlando Scandrick late in the year, he was a guy they had just traded for and was going to be cut. And you know what? It's anybody but Scandrick. And so anything positive you saw from him was like, oh, wait a minute. They may have something with Sharkavius.
Right.
With Ward here, last year with the Chiefs, turn your freaking head around.
Yep.
He can't turn his head around. I'm tired of it. I hope he's gone. I'm not saying that's what Williams and Watson are going to be, but when you're a backup quarterback, Geno Smith stepping in for Russ was all great, and you didn't expect that.
Yep.
Geno Smith this year with Seattle and the moves they made, well, you're going to be judged as a starting quarterback now. So that was interesting that they've had an up and down camp. But I bet last year at this time, if you would have said, Spagnuolo, here's what they look like. Yeah. If what they're having this year was last year's camp, he'd have been like, they've been having an amazing camp. But it's up and down because they have to be better.
And even I think it was in maybe the previous question in that same vein of him talking about the second year expectations for all of those guys in year 2, saying it's all about eliminating those mistakes you made last year. And he didn't say who this was, but he mentioned like, yeah, there are times like, hey, you know, this is a mistake you made last year. You should not be making this mistake anymore. And he said most of it's been very, very good. But he mentioned that, and then also in year 2, taking it up a notch, which I think is largely playing faster with all the confidence of a year under your belt. Not just a year of confidence that I can do this, but a year of confidence of I know the playbook, I know what I'm reading defensively. Like I don't have to stop and think for a second. I don't know, you don't have very much time to do that as a rookie either, to be fair. But that whole idea of being light years ahead of where they were last year and still having some of that up and down, some of those mistakes that are replicated that you cannot keep replicating from that point forward, you eliminate more and more of those mistakes, and that's how you see your stock continue to rise as a player. And it's interesting to note, we're talking about yesterday, where Watson and Williams are your starting gunners right now for Dave Toub. I don't know what the relationship is there for Toub and Spags and them figuring out, hey, this is either not helping, we either don't need to also have them out here being your starting gunners, or hey Dave, we got some other plans here because of McDuffie and Snead and this Shamari Connor fellow is really coming together. I don't think that's how it's going to pan out. I think Watson and Williams will be the 3rd and 4th corner on this team, and it'll be a good group for it. But it's really fascinating, and also still pretty cool to note that Trent McDuffie, L'Jarius Sneed, Jalen Watson, Joshua Williams is a hell of a quartet for your top 4 corners, all on their rookie contracts. Yeah. That's unbelievable.
And 3 of the 4 have 3 years remaining on those rookie deals as well. And look, we can look at the guys who were rookies a year ago that played a lot. When Steve Spagnuolo says, hey, you're making some, those are mistakes you made last year. And when he said that, I thought of Watson and Williams, whichever one might be the case, because Najee Johnson is no longer playing right now. Brian Cook, he's had glowing remarks about. George Karlaftis, again, talking about all of his play counts way up. And
good. That's what Karlaftis really needs. More reps.
Yes, that's right. Just more reps for Karlaftis, which is great.
It is a good about him. It's just funny because he's just going to take every rep he can, man.
And I don't think he's weighing in on Sky Moore when he's talking about guys that have made mistakes a year ago that they're making now. So it might be unfair. Maybe he was talking about Karlaftis or somebody else. But the first thing I thought of was being a couple of guys in the secondary, because as he's also talking about Williams and Watson having an up and down camp, but also that gives opportunities for a Nick Jones or an Echo Boydo or things like that to step in. One other one, and we'll take a break, is well, we don't have to take a break for another few minutes.
Oh, we're great.
That's
Stretch
great.
Our legs
this is awesome. Let's
That early
go till
break.
2?
Yeah, let's just
We
go ahead and
go till 2, Drake.
power
Should we
through.
just-
We can
oh,
go
that's
till like
awesome.
1:45 and then just fill that out. Give a long intro to the program.
Another 6 minutes.
Awesome, man.
6 minutes. I can live with 6 minutes.
Nick Bolton saying the communication. He also said night and day. But he said the hand signals. He
Yeah.
said now we've got hand signals and we know what we're saying. We know what we're talking about with hand signals. I thought that was pretty interesting because it's one thing to start to get the communication down with guys learning the defense and knowing where guys are supposed to be and then adjusting to that and yelling and audibling. When you're at home and you're on defense, crowd's pretty freaking loud.
Yep.
So you're dealing with the same thing the offense is dealing with. And I thought that was interesting that he said, now, the hand signals, we know what we're saying when we're doing those hand signals, which is just another element of adding on to how you can be at the right place at the right time and be better than you were a year ago.
Yes, and that's so important. Again, communication, you can think about it, just getting a play in and then telling people what the play is. That's not what's actually happening there with everything that will be happening pre-snap as offenses are trying to figure out what you're doing and you're trying to solve the offense's back. And like you said, when it is breathtakingly loud, when you have the home crowd making all of this noise, you have to be good at stuff like this in Arrowhead or Los Angeles. So it's really important.
Are they going to have like an indicator, like a third base coach, so that the other team doesn't pick up on what they're signaling?
Yeah, that's a touching of the nose.
Yeah,
And
I'm
they
gonna have to
go to the wrist elbow. Wrist elbow is the indicator.
I would. You'd have to, wouldn't you?
Yeah, because teams you'd have to keep switching it up, right?
Right,
You have to, keep doing those things, but at least that communication's there. If you know where guys are supposed to be and you're on the same page of, okay, in this coverage and they show this, we know where everybody, now they're audibling out of this, okay, we can show the hand signal that we're all on the same page with whatever the hand signal is this week, certainly. Yeah, but I like that little drop in.
Thanks. I was ramping up that one for
That was
a beach ball coming to me there.
Pretty good. I do want to play this from Justin Reed. And Steve Spagnuolo was asked about, the defense and how good it's been against the offense. And Andy Reid's discussed it a couple of times. And he was like, I don't know. We've struggled before. And he said that today was more of situation because they were dealing with 3rd and 7s. And he's like, we should be more successful in that. And we were. Yesterday was tougher because it was 3rd and shorts. And, it's tougher to come through and look successful. Justin Reid was asked over the weekend about the defense in training camp. And here is his response as to what he's seeing on that side of the football.
Across the board. I mean, we watched the film from this time last year to right now, especially with the first team group, just not nearly as many busts. Windows are tight. I know previous training camps used to be that, if the offense wasn't scoring a lot of points, that it used to be because maybe the offense had a bad day. But this year, the defense is playing well too. You know what I mean? So we're trying to make it hard on our offense. We give them a lot of looks. They give us a lot of looks. And it's competitive and it's back and forth every day.
I like that because that is true. That if the offense had a bad day, it was like, well, the offense wasn't all that great today. Now it's the offense had a bad day, and a couple times Andy Reid has mentioned specifically the defense has made it tough on us.
And as we've talked about, who should you be rooting for? It feels like you get a touchdown always gets a cheer in St. Joe, but that might mean that Jalen Watson got burned. I really think that the true answer, and it's hard for us to know from outside. I mean, I don't mean us, media, us. I don't mean fans. I mean anyone who's not in the huddle. This is hard to know for sure. But if each side of the ball is executing what their plan was and they feel pretty good about what the plan was, cool, great. That's all you can ask for. Because, yeah, sometimes you're going to get a great play from, I was going to say Chris Jones, but not right now, obviously. Sorry. Or you're gonna be, Drew Tranquil. He'll have a great rep in coverage, and then eventually Travis Kelce is going to cook him alive because he's Travis Kelce. That's okay.
And speaking of that, let's play the other Justin Reid clip, Drake, if we can. This is Justin Reid talking about preparing versus the Chiefs' offense in practice and what that does for them as to what you're talking about to sort of tie in here.
There's no better preparation. I mean, we're going against the best offense in the NFL every day in and day out. We're getting their best shot. We're giving them our best shot. Me getting them have man coverage against Kelce every day. I mean, shoot, I feel like the game should be easy, going against a Hall of Famer like that. So it's a lot of fun. We're competitive. We all work on each other, try and get each other better, show each other where we might have made an error at. Like sometimes I coach him up, hey, I did this, you probably could have did this. He lets me know, hey, I did this, you probably should have did that. And, we get better from it.
That's awesome, the communication with him and Kelce.
So good.
Not other guys like, hey, Travis, this is what I did here. If you do this over there, if I'm a safety and I do this and you do that over there, well, I'm toast. Or Kelce, the same thing. Hey, I did this right there. If somebody's doing that and showing over here, you need to step up into that spot and you're going to eliminate that play, or you got an interception, you've just taken me out of the play. Just that little bit of communication to work on it because Reid's going up against Travis Kelce.
Yep.
he ain't going to go up against a better tight end this year than Travis Kelce.
And he won't go up against anybody more often than he goes up against Travis Kelce.
That's exactly right. You know, sometimes you can get better against the teammates you're going up against than even your opponents. And that's, you know, not often. I've talked about before that, you know, Anthony Davis and Terrence Jones played on the same basketball team.
Yeah.
And they have video of them going through rebounding drills and how physical it was. And I'm like, Anthony Davis, the best player he played against all year was the guy in practice. And Terrence Jones, the best player he went up against all year was the guy in practice. They got better practicing against each other than they did in game situations against other high-level players.
Are you telling me that the Chiefs might need to go to a platoon system this year?
That's what I'm saying. Platoon, Travis Kelce, and Noah Gray is what I'm saying. Just half and half. Yeah. But that's sort of the same. Justin Reed gets better going up against Travis Kelce in practice than anybody he will face in a game as a tight end.
You know the little clip of Larry Bird and Michael Jordan? I can't say what they say as they hug each other. Bleep you, you bleep, bleep you. That's how I see that matchup going. Justin Reed and Travis Kelce. Swapping stories. Bleep you, I'm going to score next time. No, you're not. Bleep you.
And then they play pig for McDonald's. That's odd.
Your Kansas City Symphony presents Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. Harry's last year at Hogwarts is here, part of the epic finale and concert. Experience the loss and love of the series finish all over again as Harry and his friends rush to face the...
value. Go to GuaranteedFoods.com.
All right, we continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson with you. Les Norman, Breaking the Norm, presented by TruckMovers.com and First Federal Bank of Kansas City, joining us here in the Zone on this Tuesday edition. Les, what's up? How are you, sir?
I was sitting in Lebo's office, and I heard Briscoe say onomatopoeia, and it made me want to sprint to the studio.
Oh,
Speaking my language.
Let's go.
Onomatopoeia. Well, if we had a break, why didn't you go then?
No, that we were talking about urine with Mick yesterday.
That's right.
I think the liner says you're in the zone. That's
right.
a totally different thing.
absolutely
That's when I know
are.
it's time for a bathroom break.
There's a distinct odor in this place today.
Yeah, well, it smells like an ump show. Les Norman is with us.
His steam's coming out of his ears.
Get out of here, guys.
I've got it.
We'll see you at 12:45, everybody.
I've got the next 45 minutes. You guys
That's
are
right.
dismissed.
Les Norman, Breaking the Norm, presented by TruckMovers.com, First Federal Bank of Kansas City. Before we get into that,
you can't set me up like that and then restrain me. That's not fair.
I know, and that's tough, but I'm going to.
All right.
I'm going to.
I'll comply.
I'm gonna put the reins back on you a little bit, okay?
I got you.
We opened you up a little bit on the backside.
Self-control.
A little bit on the backside, but now, we're still training.
Serenity
so now let's pull it back a little bit. Let's coast. I mean, this is a long track, okay? We got a mile and a half here, okay? So we're still training for that. Cole Reagans, let's start there. Because that's where we started the show. Like, there is some frustration with what happened there in the ninth inning. But where's your level of sort of excitement, enthusiasm, and caution? Like, those 3 years, like, what's your level? Is it 10 across the board, 10, 10, and 10 of excitement, enthusiasm, and caution at the same time?
Yeah, my caution, there's always has to be caution. But my caution right now can't be rooted in skepticism. I want to be smart about it, and I don't want to heap the world on Cole Reagans. But so I'm seeing in the moment, it's quality of pitches, it's endurance, it's how he pitches, how him and his catcher are working together, all those things. And so I'm cautious, but I really am optimistic. I really am excited about what the future brings. I mean, if you're living everything in the present, like, oh, we got to win now, you have not been watching this season or the last couple seasons. So, yeah, I'm optimistic. I like what I see from the guy. I think there should be excitement. In a season where there's not a whole lot outside of Bobby Witt Jr., then you should be looking for things. But Cole Reagans isn't one of those things you're grasping at straws. You're in quicksand, but you're wiggling around trying to get out, so you're sinking deeper. He's a legitimate threat down the road. He's more than just flashes of brilliance. I think he's got what it takes that he could be a really good pitcher over the years.
His second strikeout was a fastball up in the zone at 98. His 10th strikeout was a fastball up in the zone at 97 in the 7th inning.
How dare he drop velocity? What the heck?
I mean, you talk about endurance. I mean, that's essentially what you're talking about. I mean, This guy was working 92 to 94 a year ago, and now his 100th pitch essentially is 97 up in the zone, and like his 15th pitch was 98.
Well, it's a good thing in some of those strikeouts up in the zone that the hitter swung
the
entire way around.
You can't
because we know that check swings don't count.
Can't do it.
Sorry, I got to reel it back in again.
Can't do it. Which, by the way, his final strikeout was actually against Urias on a check swing, in which he was rung up by the umpire, he was
home plate umpire.
He was rung up by the home plate umpire, almost did it, but pointed down to first, and he was like, yeah,
he T-Rexed it back in.
It really wasn't close. It was a check swing, but it was like, and by the way, on that check swing, Urias was sort of hopping towards first, as in like, I got it. He didn't turn around and start walking to the dugout there. So I think the story of last night's game to me is Cole Reagans, what they may have in him.
Yeah.
And then also Bobby Witt with the, he laces that line drive to center field there in Fenway and gets a double out of it because it was just a perfect hop off of the wall to the center fielder is why it wasn't a triple. But you got two outs, man on, at that point first, and Michael Garcia down by one, and Bobby Witt comes through, an inside pitch, gets his hands in, and just line drive there. I mean, it's Bobby Witt and Cole Reagans are to me sort of the takeaway from last night's game.
I hope people understand what they're seeing in Bobby Witt Jr. because he doesn't have 40 home runs like Ohtani and some of the great things you see some of these other players. You know, Matt Olson's sneaking up from Atlanta. He's sneaking up on Ohtani.
That's right,
He's
yeah.
at 39 now or something. But the athleticism, the mechanical genius, the balance, the power, just the pure athleticism and all the things that he can do is amazing. And I think that just because his batting average may not look the same, if you watch Bobby Witt Jr. every day and you're a pure fan, you have to compare his greatness, not in the home run category of Ohtani or some of the other things that some of these great players are doing, or, you know, Acuna and how good of a hitter he is, and all these other guys in these other leagues that are doing great things. Bobby Witt Jr. is in every single conversation when it comes to the topic of great players and all the things that you can do. And this isn't just me being cranky old man, you know, but the thing that breaks my heart is that Bobby Witt Jr. is going to be a free agent before he turns 28. And
this guy's going to be a superstar.
He's
coming
gonna
off a 27-year-old season.
27 in the prime. He is going to get paid, and he's not going to get paid by the Royals, most likely, because they're not going to back up the truck that it takes to pay people.
Unless they do it this offseason.
Yeah, and if they don't, then are we just not serious? We're really throwing in the towel if we don't really sign him to some long-term extension. And the Royals, I'm tired of hearing the mid-market. If you're going to spend money and buy a team right before, I mean, you didn't see COVID coming, but, I mean, seriously, if you can weather that storm and now you want a new ballpark when they're losing, my goodness, lock the dude down. And now you're starting to see compliments. Massey is starting to play better. That's if you're not going to move Witt Jr. to third and leave him at short, great. You've got your up the middle there. Still got to figure out your outfield situation. If Drew Waters is going to be your guy and you give him a long-term look, okay, fine. But now Cole Reagans comes out and you're like, whoa, now we finally got a legitimate starter when it's been just a quagmire of guys getting hurt and not being able to throw strikes and all that mess of what the pitching staff has been. And Freddie Fermin, who knew he was going to come out and start hitting 300? I mean, you've got your up the middle. If Waters is your center fielder, and then you've got your middle infielders, and then a pitcher that's proving how talented and what he can be in the future, and then a catcher that's not named Salvi. I mean, there is a really good foundation that you can begin. And if you're going to put Garcia at third base, okay, lift some weights and get a little bit bigger and drive the ball. But there's a lot to look into, but they have to be able to keep them and lock them down.
Yeah, because, I mean, what you're finding out in Freddie Fermin is giving you more of a possibility or more of a realistic view that if you move Salvi this offseason, you're not replacing him with Cam Gallagher.
Right.
You know, you're not replacing him with you're replacing him with somebody who's batting 300
or a first-round high schooler.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's a whole different story. Yeah.
You're replacing.
We talked about that already.
I know. You're replacing him with a guy who's batting 305 and OPSing at 871.
And by the way, he's a good catcher.
Yeah,
he's a good defender.
OPS plus at 136. So I mean, that's what you would be replacing him with, and so it gives you more the rest of the season to see Freddie Fermin more. They are playing Salvi at first base. He's played first base more this year than he has. I think he's one start at first base away from matching his career in starts at first base throughout every single year he's played. So I think
don't say anything negative because you might get kicked off the broadcast.
No, I got to say something positive.
Yes, I mean, you know,
if
I know it's not the Orioles, but be careful.
If I say how awesome Cole Reagans has been compared to like years past when the Royals haven't been as awesome, but this year has been awesome. Well, I'm sorry I mentioned that they used to suck. I'm sorry I mentioned the game notes that you put there. Story for a different time as well, maybe in the second segment. I don't know.
Yes.
But 64 games for Bobby Witt. It's roughly 40% of the season. And the marker that I've continued to use is when he was taken out of the leadoff spot. 64 games since he was taken out of the leadoff spot. He's batting .302, getting on base at .341, slugging .529, and .870 OPS. And in that time, if it was 162, so what he would be pacing for over the course of a season in the 64 games he's played, if he plays a full season at that pace, would be 33 home runs, 33 doubles, 8 triples, 124 RBIs, and 50 stolen bases.
Yikes. That's unbelievable.
I mean, he's a superstar right now.
Yeah.
He's budding into an absolute superstar, and he's
not old enough to rent a car.
Nor off of his parents' insurance. Is he
Right.
still on Bobby Witt Sr.'s insurance?
I think in the big leagues they can take care of it, but he could be.
Is that right?
He could be.
They could take care of it. I don't know. And one of the other things that's been really awesome to see is that, it's been his defense.
Mm-hmm.
It's been how good he's been playing defense, and I think it was, trying to find the tweet that was sent out, but I may not be able to find it.
I would protect Bobby Witt Jr. on the team from anybody that has any negative attitude, because that dude plays with pure joy. He's not just an incredible elite, once-in-a-lifetime player, but he just plays with this exuberance that is so infectious, and he's too young and doesn't have enough big league experience to be a leader vocally, but he is making everybody on that team better with how hard he plays, no matter what the score is, no matter what the count is, no matter how tired he is. Does he ever get tired, do you think? Has he been
Seems
tired?
impossible. I've never seen it.
He did have a day off on Sunday.
Yeah, but they probably forced him to.
That's
But,
exactly right.
Just,
It's
he leads by example, and I love it.
And that exuberance survived a truly apocalyptically bad stretch of baseball. And by stretch, I mean months. That is a pretty, I don't know, you could tell me if that's a rare thing or not, but it seems like it to me, where that energy level never seemed to drop. He was frustrated by losing, I'm sure, but never in a way where it translated to where he didn't have this stretch that we're talking about now.
Yeah.
The energy's always been there.
And when boring teams come into town, not like, okay, the Cardinals are getting ready to come into town,
Sure.
the I-70, they're going to watch that. When the Yankees come in or the Angels come in to see Ohtani, that's obviously going to be a draw. And I know there's the fireworks Fridays and the dollar hot dogs and all that, but when there's a ho-hum, boring team that comes into town, Royals ownership should be really thankful that he's on their team, because Bobby Witt Jr. already at a young age is bringing people into the seats, and what could be even worse as far as ticket sales.
He his 3 batted balls last night were 106, 113, and 112.
That's 331 miles an hour.
He hit balls 331 miles an hour? That's unbelievable. But also there's a story at Fox Sports that I was looking up, and it came out yesterday, late afternoon, from Jake Mentz at Fox Sports, how Bobby Witt Jr. went from being one of Major League Baseball's worst defenders to among its best. And he talks about all the stuff that he did in the offseason, going and working specifically with a defensive coach and his time in Texas. And that's what he did was he went from some of the worst defensive metrics that were there a year ago to being well above average and in one of the highest percentiles of defensive metrics that are there. And he rewired his defensive approach. So Jeremy Eisenhower, local guy, and invited Nate Trotsky. Apparently he's
I've heard of the name, yeah.
well-known infield coach. So he brought him down,
the guru,
just to work with Bobby Witt Jr., and that's it, over and over, and got back to your first step here, your first step there. And what he was seeing is that Bobby Witt's first part of his movement was immediately setting him up for failure, because he described it as, if you're late for work and you're rushing to get there, you're not concentrating the way you would be if you're just simply on time and you're driving. You're rushing, your mind's going 100 miles an hour, you're doing different things. And he said his first couple of steps were setting him up to where his body started to rush then. So now some of the routine plays, he was speeding up.
Yeah.
And now the routine plays are being made. And so just from that, just working every day over and over and over, and Bobby Witt talked about how difficult it was and the things that he was making him do, just getting back to the basics of everything, but making it really difficult, the basics. They weren't just like, hey, here's a first step here. He was discussing daily what the grind was. And now he's one of the best shortstops in baseball defensively. And now we're seeing what he's doing at the plate. So the guy's a wonderkind already, but we see what Patrick Mahomes does behind the scenes, right? We saw the Netflix quarterback and all the workouts and stuff. I would have loved for there to be cameras to see the workouts and the grind of how hard it was with Bobby Witt describing what this guy was putting him through to rework all of his defensive metrics.
I'm hoping they're out there. Like even his early work
would be
now,
amazing.
That would be amazing to see. You know, what I would say, how to describe this is that, you know, through high school and then college and then my professional career, there were seasons like maybe a few weeks here or a series there or something like that where you're so in tune with your body, you're eating right, you're feeling good, you're getting rest, and you're feeling like anywhere you hit the ball to me, that is your fault because I'm going to catch it. And if you take an extra base, I'm going to throw you out. I'll even hold on to the ball for an extra 2 steps to give you some hope that you can get to the next base, and then I'll throw you out kind of thing. Bobby Witt Jr. is like that every game, every pitch. And I'm not saying he's not going to make errors and he's not perfect because that's just the human nature part of it, but he's always – you can see the difference that these defensive gurus have helped him in. Because when he dives, he's right on time. When it's routine, you watch his footwork and not the ball. When you see him set up, you watch the way he squares his shoulders, his arm angle across the field. It's almost as if the ball speeds up as it approaches first base because he's getting on top of the ball. He's backspinning. He's getting his leg behind it. He knows the timing of the runner. Everything. There's the proprioception and the timing and the awareness and the scouting report ticker tape that's just continuing to go through his head. And so, again, I can't overstate or understate how good even the littlest of things are with this kid. It's unbelievable.
Outs above average last year, Bobby Witt Jr. ranked in the first percentile.
Are you making up Fanalytics again?
That's first percentile is the worst you can get.
Bad.
It's 1 to 99. Bad. Right now, he currently ranks in the 99th percentile.
Better.
By the same exact. So if you watched it and the eye test said like this, he's a bad shortstop. It's like, oh, he ranks in the first percentile and outs above average. Yeah, kind of makes sense.
Are we going to see some Gold Gloves?
I mean, the way that the analytics are saying, I mean, if this is just the first year of him putting all of this work in, and one of the things that I wanted to ask you about this story is, so this Jake Mintz that talks about it here says
he's part of the Cespedes Family Barbecue, that Twitter account, everything. He's one of those guys.
Very cool. He says it all began as soon as last season ended. He said Witt underwent an honest self-assessment of his first year in the majors. He said the offensive side he trusted would come around with intense practice and more experience, but defensively, Witt knew he needed to change his entire approach with that. One of the things
that's maturity, wherever it came from, whether it's his dad or coaches or whatever, because on the hitting side, it's so mental. When you're already physically talented, it's so mental that you work really hard in taking BP in the offseason and sticking with your approach in season and all those things, and it's just reps, and some days you feel good, some days you don't, but you put in the work, and then in the games, you shut your brain off, and you trust what you've done will be there for you. That's maturity, and it's mental. On the other side, on the defensive side, you see it, and you'd make your honest assessment, but you bust it, and you're thinking in between pitches, like, okay, remember this, okay, throw the ball, let's go. So it's almost away from the game active hitting, in the game active on the defensive side. You're putting in the work in the offseason and in early work and extra work on both. One's mental, one's physical. And, he just does both so well.
As a young player, how do you toe the line and straddle between I'm confident, I've always been able to do this, and I've done it at a high level. I was the number 2 overall pick for a reason. I crushed in the minor leagues. It's what I've done. I know I've got this ability, so I just need to stay on the course and it will happen, versus no, I've got to be vulnerable and open myself up to criticism that's there and give an honest assessment of I need to change this and this. And where do I go about doing that? Because the Royals were going through a bunch of different changes themselves.
Yeah.
He couldn't just go to his, well, I'm going to go to the bench coach. Well, I'm going to go to this guy. Well, they're all fired. New guys that he doesn't know. So now I've got to find somebody that I would trust enough to completely change my approach. Like the baseline of what I'm doing as a big leaguer. I've played in the big leagues for a year now. I got a $7 million bonus. I've done this my entire life. And now I'm going to completely change my defensive approach. And I got to surrender it all to him and say, here you go. Like that balance from I'm cocky, I'm confident, I'm the best player on the field versus I suck And it's not a matter of just being stubborn and sticking with it. It's a matter of, I suck and I have to change.
Yeah. I think that talent and built-in greatness can make you successful, but it's not guaranteed. So he had those things, and maybe it was his dad, his parents' upbringing, and all the combination of it. But I think confidence and humility when talent is in place is where greatness comes from. You have to be humble and be willing to change. So it's self-awareness. It's that innate ability to be humble, because, I mean, we could sit here and go over a list of players. The first guy that comes to mind when I think lack of humility was Barry Bonds. Now, yeah, he was a great hitter and talented and all that. We know there was probably some help when your hat size goes from 3 to 27. There's a little bit of some help going on there. But Bobby Witt Jr., just you can see the way he was raised. I mean, I've told this before of back when he was still a teenager and just got drafted, and we're down at Royals Fantasy Camp. And him and Prado come in, they bring him in, and he stands in the middle of 120 people. Stands in the middle, and they're all surrounding him in the Royals clubhouse down there. And they're just lobbing him questions, and he's just standing there, of course, with a bat in his hand, and he's leaning on his bat. And he's like, he points to someone, he's like, yes, sir. Yes, sir. He's polite. You can tell his upbringing is good, but he answers questions in a way that wasn't like, oh, just this pat answer, this is what I have to do. He's engaged in the game. He's engaged in people. He's got a natural humility about him that you can tell he's aware, he's willing to work, and he just also happens to be really, really good at his craft. And so that's why we're seeing it's not just a guy that can hit or play good defense or is bigger than he looks and really fast and all that. He's a humble guy, and humble guys are aware, and they'll get better, and they'll be great leaders and great teammates. And so you're not in Kansas City, you're not just seeing a great talent that's once in a lifetime. You're seeing a guy that can get better because he's willing to change and understands the game and who he is.
Yeah. And it's and like you said, it's the willing to change, the humility, but also you got to work. Like, he's gifted. He's talented. He's gifted.
But that work ethic's been there since before he was driving a car.
Exactly. He's talented. He's gifted. But you're not this player just by natural talent.
Yeah.
Some might be, but you're not to this level. You're gifted with a level of natural talent. But how many swings in the cage throughout his life to be able to hit 102 from Duran over the wall for a grand slam?
Yep.
I mean, it ain't the first time he dug into the box to do that. That's swing after swing after swing after swing after swing after swing.
Yep.
Million swings probably. I mean, honestly, like, how many swings do you think in his life he's taken in a box? Million?
Right. More.
Way more, yeah.
Way more. But the thing about Bobby Witt Jr., too, and if you're just even talking about hitting, the swing that's going to make him finally reach the level that he's there is one more. It's one more. Oh, have you had enough?
That's a good point. Yeah.
One more.
Yeah, just one more.
And it may not be today, but tomorrow morning when I get up at 5:30 and I'm waiting on you to open up the front door so I can get in the cage, it's always the next swing. It's not like he's not going to be content with what he has. Again, those 4 at-bats during the game, shut your brain off and trust what you've done and get after it. And your experience is going to make you better and better in how you study pitchers and your plan at the plate and situational hitting and all those things, but it's always the next one.
I mean, I don't know what this season's going to look like at the end. I don't even care what the record's going to be as long as it's one of the 3 worst in baseball.
It will be.
But as long as that's the case. But I think there will be an assessment of what does this season look like if we look back in an evaluation year, if Witt continues doing this, and Reagans has some level of this, and Fermin continues doing this, and Garcia's playing the defense that he is, and Massey's playing defense and swinging the bat a little bit better. Melendez is starting to come around.
Vinny Pasquantino showed you everything you wanted to see,
yeah,
and then it was obviously cut short.
Absolutely.
Where does the confidence then stand at the end of this year if some moves are made, et cetera, for what this team can be? So an evaluation year, what started off an awful, and these guys are sucking, and they're not playing well, and Chris Bubich was a bright spot, and now he sucks, has quickly turned into, okay, maybe there is something real and tangible to take away from an evaluation.
For me, this isn't about a 7-game winning streak either. I'm not excited. the win-loss record is makes you anti-excited, but it has nothing to do with the 7-game win streak. It's the people that are showing the improvement and the greatness of Bobby Witt Jr. and the surprises is what we've been talking about. That should make Royals fans really excited for the future.
We'll take a timeout. We'll come back, and boy, it was a surprise for everybody out on the field in the stands that it was called a ball and a check swing. We'll talk about some of those things.
I'm getting out of here.
Coming up, more so next.
Okay, let's go. Want to see more of The Zone? Watch the show live on the Sports Radio 810 WHB Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch.
Look, one of the biggest investments is more than likely your home, and you want to make sure that the thing that protects you, the shelter we talk about, well, the shelter is the roof. Without the roof, there is no shelter. It's just some walls around you, but you're still open to the elements. When you've got the storms that have rolled through, the high winds that rolled through, you want to make sure that everything is good with that roof. Pyramid Roofing, give them a call for a free estimate, 816-966-1101 or pyramidroofingkc.com. Have them come out, make sure everything is good to go, looks good. You don't want the storm to come through and then hey, we happen to be in the area with, the Johnsons right around the corner. We were working on there. We're going to give you a discount. Everybody in this neighborhood, we're going to give it 20% off today only. But you got to sign up today only with these storms. You don't want that. You want to work with a company that's been around for a long time. It's Pyramid Roofing. Again, for a free estimate, give them a call, 816-966-1101. pyramidroofingkc.com. If it's roof repair, if it's a new roof, if it's gutters, whatever it might be, they've got you taken care of. pyramidroofingkc.com. It's Pyramid Roofing.
Hey, KC, SSJ here. If you could transform the look of your garage in a day, would you? I'm talking.
Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson with you, Josh Briscoe, Drake, Les Norman, breaking the norm. He is presented by TruckMovers.com and First Federal Bank of Kansas City. That umpire is jacked, by the way. That's the Ed Hockley of umpires in the Little League World Series.
Goodness, how intimidating for those little dudes.
You know who I'm not coming out as a coach and arguing with? That home plate umpire there in the Little League World Series. That's for sure.
Gracious.
You don't want heat with Ben Grimm?
John Cena is behind the plate tonight.
The messed up thing is he's not even wearing a chest protector.
Yeah, he is. His pecs.
Yeah, that's right. That's just what he calls his pec.
He's sitting in the camera booth, and he's still right behind the catcher.
It's
crazy.
Unbelievable how jacked that guy is, man. Anyway, speaking of umpires that are jacked,
Serenity now.
The Royals have had some ump shows, man. They had the CB Buckner roller coaster is one of the best, and by best, I mean worst.
Yeah.
Because he might have some consistency. He dropped.
I'm watching this Little League World Series game now just for the ump.
I know. He might.
These are still the regionals, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude has Popeye forearms and then the body of the Hulk around that.
CB Buckner might offer some consistency early in the game, but the second he has a pitch in the zone that he calls a ball or a pitch well outside the strike zone that he calls a strike, then it just becomes a guessing game. Then it becomes a dark because he's making up for this, and then he calls this. At that point,
and then he's mad people complain, and he wants to throw everybody out.
It's just completely lost at that point. It's like the first inning or two. Once the one pitch that he misses, then it's the coaster. Just here we go, hands and feet inside the ride at all times.
I'm done. I told you. I told you a couple weeks ago, guys. You've convinced me. Well, the umpires have convinced me.
Yeah, that's right. We haven't had to do anything.
I am done. All of them. Robo-umps from here on out. I'm done. Can't deal with it anymore. Tired of it. Done.
Like there's a frustration that goes along with the inconsistency of the whole thing. There's a frustration that goes along with the balls and strikes. And there's also a frustration that goes along with the thin skin.
Yes.
And
the ego.
You don't have to answer to anybody after the game is over.
Yes.
And the only
Drake
time
and I were talking about this.
The only time you actually have to answer to somebody is when somebody may offer a complaint of some sort.
Yeah.
And he's immediately tossed.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Just after the game, have a press conference. If there's some kind of call, just have a press conference, explain what you saw, show an ounce of humility, hire 2 to 5 extra umpires that are on the sideline, and if you make a certain level, if you're below a percentage, you miss a series. Still pay them. Fine. But show some accountability and some humility and say, hey, look, this is the reason, and answer questions from the press. Legitimate questions. If they're dumb questions where you're just picking at something like, okay, next question. But you ought to be mandated that you have to stand in front of the press. It's okay, this is what we saw. And then, like, the picture you put up, the side-by-side, you should be able to show them, say, okay, explain this because you called this a strike, but then you called this a ball, and explain it. But it doesn't happen. Never.
At least
it doesn't happen.
In the NFL, they've got the pool reporter.
And even that is insufficient most of the time.
Yeah.
But at least Adam Teicher gets to ask a couple of questions and say, okay, so just walk me through this one here, Chief.
So Chris Jones had the ball in his hand when he landed on Derek Carr in the sack, and you called that roughing. Why? Okay, so the rule says this, and at least you can ask some questions, even though you may not like the response of this is the rule, blah, blah, blah. But the only time they answered anybody is when somebody offers a complaint of some sort. And you really can't even complain. Like the way we see players complain is by walking out of the batter's box and using their timeout because they can't believe the pitch that was just there. Can't show up the umpire. Sometimes can't even look in his direction.
Yeah.
You just have to walk away. And the only way that people know that I'm frustrated with that is by me just simply walking away. That's the only time. And
you talk about Major League Baseball players. I've heard people say this, there's a big ego and they're making all this money and all that. Some of the biggest egos are not wearing baseball uniforms, they're wearing umpires uniforms. Because as soon as you question them, if you're questioning them just to bicker and it's a certain call, okay, you deserve to get thrown out. This isn't just an umpire hating thing. There are players that just want to fight and argue. Okay, get out of here. Go. But on legitimate calls with legitimate beefs, like I had a chance to talk with Matt Cottrell this last Monday at the we talked about that at the Royals Charities Golf Tournament. He's a pleasant dude. And
I don't know. He's been thrown out of 2 of the last 3 games. He seems like a hothead.
Well, I didn't say anything that wanted to get him ejected from the Royals Charities Golf Tournament, but he's there with his boys, and he's like, I introduced him, and hey, I'm this, back and forth. And I wanted to ask questions about him and welcome to the city. How are you? How are you adjusting? He's like, hey, when did you play? And what position did you play? And what were some of the minor league cities? And where'd you play in college?
When did I play?
Yeah.
Learn something, Matt.
Come on, man. I played for 7 seconds about 28 years ago. How can you not remember that? So, again, it just it's frustrating. Very frustrating.
Well, and it gets frustrating because a few points on this. We joked that Quattro's been thrown out of 2 of the last 3 games. But when Blanco's up at the plate and he's got 2 strikes on him and there's a pitch that comes in that's a breaking ball that's 3 inches below the strike zone.
Yeah.
And he takes it and you're rung up. Well, you're extending the zone in that situation. And I always hate well, you can't make that call in that situation. Okay, well, if it's a holding penalty in the first quarter, it's a holding penalty in the fourth because those are the rules. That's not a strike, and it wasn't a strike before. Now it's a strike, and so you extended the zone late in the game for something that hadn't been a strike, and then you call it a strike, and it's not close to being a strike. It's one of the worst misses of the night when, different Twitter accounts go through and show the worst missed calls of the umpires the night before, and that one showed up with Dairon Blanco in a pretty significant spot for the Royals. Matt Cottrell is not happy about it. He comes out to defend Blanco because Blanco's then talking with the umpire.
And good managers do that.
And he gets run because he came out to, offer the, hey, that wasn't close to a strike.
Hey, sir, I disagree with your zone.
Yeah. And then the reaction that everybody had of when Vic Carapazzo, who's behind the plate tonight, Vic Carapazzo had the safe.
Give me some onomatopoeia already.
The no swing. Everybody's reaction was what? And Quattrero offering that reaction gets rung. Like he
was looking for it. He was looking for it.
He gets thrown out of the game for that. Like how many NFL coaches are so demonstrative on the sideline that Andy Reid is rare in that he just sits there and looks stoic throughout most of the game.
Yeah.
Oh, a game-winning field goal, game-winning interception, 3rd down and 1 in the middle of the game, 1st down of the entire game. Here's the same expression from Andy Reid. My frustration comes in with, and as a hitter, and even as a pitcher, but as a hitter, a guy that's been through it, if there were the robo-umps or not, but the game of baseball knowing that this is the strike zone to where if I take this pitch below the knees, I know for a fact it's a ball because that's where the strike zone is. There may be times where I'm taking that outside pitch and I think it's working off the plate and it works back and that's a strike. I'm out. I might complain about it, but it's a strike. I go back and look at it. I'm like, that was a strike. I thought it was a little outside. But if you have an idea and know what the zone is, so many, like CB Buckner, how can you take a pitch? How can you be a batter that takes a close pitch?
Yeah.
How can you be a pitcher that throws something where I'm like, I'm working this area of the strike zone and I know that it's going to be called a strike because that's the strike zone. Oh, wait, he just missed it. Those are at-bat changing calls. And last night,
those are game-changing calls.
Yeah.
And here's, I hear this a lot like, oh, come on, it's just one pitch. Here's the debunked thing on it's just one pitch. First of all, you're penalizing a hitter that has learned the strike zone, that has learned to be calm in a pressure situation. Now you extend it not just by a borderline, it was a millimeter off. Okay, I get it. But 3 inches in umpiring in that situation, it's like a foot. It's the same thing. But now you have completely given confidence to the pitcher, the home team, and now as a hitter, if he does throw that again, now you're torn, but now you're all mental. We just talked about how hitting should never be mental, even though it is. Now you're forcing a guy to swing at a pitch that 90% of the time is going to end up you're hitting a ground ball.
I was going to say, but
it completely changes it.
How often do we see a guy take a ball that's low, that's called a strike, and then swings over the top of one in the dirt?
Because
it happens all the time.
It does happen all the time.
Because now I've got to swing a little bit lower. Okay, well, now I'm swinging at something that I would have taken because I just took the pitch before that or two pitches before that, but that was called a strike. Now I'm already thinking in my mind, I've got to change my strike zone a little bit lower. Oh, here's a low pitch, and now it's breaking, it's falling off the table, and I'm screwed, and I've swung over the top.
So the umpire causes the whole situation now to get in the hitter's head, because now not only have you opened that much of the zone at the bottom of the zone for the pitcher, if he decides instead of throwing that again to throw a fastball up in the zone, now you've opened the top of the zone because you've put the hitter completely on the defensive. From a strike to a ball, you go from 2-1. It's a 2-1 count. 2-2 is a light year difference from 3-1. Light year difference, because now you're on the defensive. And sure, some good hitters can thrive in that situation, but not when now you've extended the zone and given a guy with a really good breaking ball that much more of an advantage. So again, umpires don't look at it like that. They look at it like, oh, well, I called it a strike. You should have swung at that because he threw the same pitch. I called it a strike last time. Well, neither one of them are a strike, you knucklehead. And so throwing some onomatopoeia there.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. So it's really, really frustrating because it changes the game. And umpires should be there to just fall into the background. Yeah. It's the Homer Simpson fading into the hedges kind of thing where, you got to call balls and strikes, and you're going to be human and you're going to miss. But, man, lock in when you're supposed to lock in. Umpires need to quit searching for, I made the call. Now look at the opposing team to see if you're going to do something where I can throw you out. It's an ego trip. It's lack of accountability, and I'm just tired of it, man. I've been so against the robo-umps, and now I'm so against the umps themselves. Bring them out.
Did you guys see the Laz Diaz scorecard from last night?
No, but I saw Aaron Boone.
Well, why don't you go and take a look, and then I'll show Les, because I think this might be the last thing I get to show Les today before his head flies off
I
his
have
shoulders.
a radio show today. You want me to snap before I get there?
Oh, that's amazing.
Ideally, while you're still live with us,
Fair
I
enough.
think.
All right.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's
that's
pretty funny.
Oh, my gosh. That is unbelievable. And the funny, called strike accuracy, 66%. 17 of 50 called strikes were true balls, and they're not even close to the lock.
No, it's not close. These are not. There's a couple pitches in there.
Laz Diaz was umping in the minor leagues when I was playing, by the way, and they're starting to name dirt after me. So that tells you how long he's been umping and how he probably should stop.
Did you see Aaron Boone's reaction?
I did not see
that. Okay, I'll show you that video when we
it's
go
Aaron
to break.
Boone. I can actually,
So I'll show you that video when we go to break. But and as we let you go, but the flip side can be true too. When you've got an umpire with a really tight strike zone, it now creates an advantage for the hitter. Because what should have been,
that's not okay either.
What should have been a 1-2 count is now a 2-1 count, or what should have been a 1-1 count is now a 2-0 count, and you've now got to be even finer in where you've got to be. So then that changes the game, or changes the pitcher out there, changes the hitter who can say, well, I can tunnel this.
Yeah.
I mean, because I know I've got a guy back here who's got a postage stamp that's a strike zone. So, I mean, it can work both ways, and really it just should be, this is the zone you've worked with your entire life.
Yep.
I mean, almost your entire life.
And one of the things you do have to say, I feel bad for guys like, I think it was maybe a month or so ago, I think it was Tom Tishner who was behind home plate. He missed the first pitch of the game. And then, according to that accuracy, every single pitch for the rest of the game, he was perfect.
Huh.
The first pitch of the game, and I saw it on that
on the
that particular scorecard thing on the site. And you have to, I'm sure they're probably, well, you don't praise us when we do a good job.
Yeah.
Well, you should get praised when you do a good job. The problem is when the ego comes with a bad night. If it were just like, you know what, man, I had an off night, I would be like, you know what? I respect that.
Yeah.
And I'll go get him tonight. And I appreciate what you're doing. And I know this game is hard and it can be subjective or whatever in certain situations. But when the ego comes with it and you see this kind of stuff consistently, it's beyond frustrating. But you know what? Still the greatest game on earth. Okay.
As we go to break,
let's look at Laz getting all defensive.
Here's the video. And by the way, Aaron Boone kept yelling, "You bleeping stink," right to his face.
Did he throw him out?
Oh, yeah. He was already tossed at this point. But watch Aaron Boone now. Watch. He goes over, draws a line where he's been calling the strike, and then does Laz Diaz does a mimicking of Laz Diaz.
Did he already throw him out at that point?
Oh yeah, he's already been tossed.
Oh, he's already been tossed.
Yeah, he's already been tossed at this point.
Yeah.
But he goes over and draws a line which is close to the left-handed batter's
I've
box.
done that.
And then lines up
And
like
Laz
Diaz.
keeps chirping because he knows he's getting embarrassed.
And then does the strike call like
Yep.
Laz Diaz.
I love it.
The pitch in question here was a
was-
strike, by the way.
That doesn't matter.
It's so
He's just frustrating of all the bad ones.
This is top of the eighth, absolutely, 100%. No, this was absolutely justified. It's just even funnier to me that I was watching this back and that's actually a strike. So he actually picked a rough
great.
time to go out there, and everyone involved deserved it. Here's the pitch list.
Les Norman, Breaking the Norm, presented by
6-10.
TruckMovers.com and First Federal Bank of Kansas City. Les, you're the man. Appreciate it as always, brother.
Can you guys give me a couple weeks now of give me
all right.
off from umpire talk? My stress level, you're going to make me have to go on blood pressure medication.
Don't worry, it'll be a couple of weeks before we have something like that again. So
Yeah,
it's,
it'll be tonight.
It'll be a
You
couple
know
of
it.
innings. Les, you're the man. Appreciate it, sir.
You guys are wonderful.
Yes, sir. We'll talk with Adam Teicher coming up at 1 o'clock. Little Chiefs talk. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. More Zone next.
Want to see more of The Zone? Watch the show live on the Sports Radio 810 WHB Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch.
All right, so it's been over a month now that we've had Guaranteed Foods, and as happy as we could possibly be with the experience that we have had, I mean, the monthly investment is more than worth it, and we are saving money on our grocery bill, our food bill, which didn't know if that would be the case, but money and time back in our lives. We got healthier food, we got easier prep, we got the personal food inventory on hand with a 180-day supply, quicker meals. Those are just a few reasons that Guaranteed Foods has been a life changer for us. We've got the Guaranteed Foods heavy-duty commercial food service center that's right there with all of the food, the products that we have, the ease of ordering that comes with Guaranteed Foods. Give them a call, 913-888-5000 or guaranteedfoods.com, and you can see the difference that they can make in your life that they have made for me, for my family, for us, what we have been able to do. And last night, I'd mentioned that we had the teriyaki hoisin beef stir fry that from the time we started cooking to finished eating was 18 minutes. We had the rice, the stir fry vegetables, the beef. 18 minutes later, we were done eating. That's prep time in some of these other food services that are out there. And we've got all of the food right there. Walk outside, boom, what do we want to decide between? Because we've got a food inventory there. The customer service is amazing. I'd mentioned that we cooked that last night because Jennifer Bedford had sent my wife the recipe because she was like, hey, what are some things we can do? She's like, boom, we did this last week. Here you go. Check this out. And we had, Lindsay Larson came out and guided us through the entire process of making sure that what we were looking for was taken care of and, again, can fit in our budget. It is the Guaranteed Foods difference that all of the food is blast frozen. It's great. It locks in the product's flavors, protects the juices, so when you serve the meal, again from frozen, it retains the great taste. It's not dried out, processed only in a federally inspected plant. It is unbelievable, and you will not be sorry if you give them a call, 913-888-5000. You can check them out, guaranteedfoods.com, and see all of the ways that they separate themselves from the beef quality, the ground beef, to the poultry, to the pork, to the garden fresh vegetables and fruits that they pick specifically at a certain time and then immediately freeze and blast frozen so that you will get the best nutrients, the best flavors, all of that. It is guaranteedfoods.com, 913-888-5000, and see why Guaranteed Foods has been the official sponsor of Family Mealtime since 1958.
Twin Peaks is the best in the game. Here, it's bigger game days and bolder.
All right, we continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. We'll talk with Adam Teicher coming up at 1 o'clock. ESPN, our Chiefs insider. We heard from Steve Spagnuolo and Nick Bolton and Jalen Watson and Blake Bell earlier in the show. We also heard some read some quotes from Brett Veach about Chris Jones. The latest in the contract, which is essentially feeling like it's in a holding pattern right now, saying that as the days go on with, September 7th, the start of the season, that you would expect the discussions to heat up again. They are going to heat up again, as in in the future they're going to heat up. So it's not really going on right now. So it feels like it's just a holding pattern, and maybe they're checking in. Hey, just checking in, seeing how you're doing. Hope you have a good day. Okay, bye. Talk later. Cool. Good talk. And then also Adam Teicher with the story at ESPN about Kadarius Toney and Isaiah Pacheco, that there is an expectation, a confidence that both Pacheco and Kadarius Toney will be ready for week 1 against the Lions. Interesting they're put into the same category because Pacheco really, I don't think was ever much of a concern for a lot of fans, myself included.
He's doing everything out there except getting the thuds.
Yeah, the thud hits, that's right. And Toney was sort of an expectation that he was going to miss the first week, maybe first couple of weeks. And is he makes the squad, you put him on IR, so you end up keeping 7 receivers, but really for the first 4 weeks, you're keeping only 6. Maybe only 5 of them are active on game day, but 7 on your roster, all of that way to be able to sneak some different guys through. If he's ready to play week 1, there's none of that goes on, so Adam Teicher had that quote, so we'll talk with him about a number of those things with the Chiefs.
Yeah, the timing on this works out great because I am dying to know what his read of what Brett Veach said there was, because he's the one on the other side of it. We're reading this quote, organizationally, we feel pretty good. Those guys will be ready to play, barring no setbacks. I think we're in a good place with both of those guys. Is a little bit different than, we're way too far out to be able to hashtag report this anyway, but report Kadarius Toney to be active on Sunday, or I guess Thursday in this case.
Not this Sunday.
Right. This to me, when I first saw it, was like, oh, okay, like what's the new info? What did we get here? And then reading Adam's story and the quotes from Veach, barring no setbacks for Kadarius Toney is that's a pretty hefty weight.
It's carrying a lot of weight.
So I am interested in Adam's professional opinion, what he thinks is most likely, what Veach really thinks, and I don't think Veach is leading anybody astray here for no particular reason. But I was and still am extremely excited about Kadarius Toney, and it is a healthier thing for me to keep my expectations one click lower than I want them to be, because I really let him grow and grow for portions of this offseason, and then that plant died. Or I had surgery on its meniscus, I guess.
Kareem Hunt has signed with the New Orleans Saints.
Oh, is that official?
Yes, and Anthony Barr, both visiting, so both signing with the New Orleans Saints. I doubt that means he will be in uniform on Sunday, playing against the Chiefs.
Revenge game.
Again, is it still a revenge game 3 years later?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Yeah. So that with some of the NFL news there. So, and they said that Derek Carr and the starters will be playing on Sunday against the Chiefs. So the starting defense will see the starting offense for the Saints at least. Familiar face in Derek Carr. We'll see what he looks like out there on the field. Adam Teicher next.
Now more than ever, if you own or operate a medical facility, you need Walker Medical Linen Service. They provide
mealtime. Enjoy healthier food, more free time, free delivery, and better value. Go to GuaranteedFoods.com.
All right, we continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Heading up until 2 o'clock, the program with Soren Petro comes your way at 2. Training camp coverage presented by Barstool Sportsbook at Hollywood Casino, Bud Light, Greengrass Cattle Company, and Premier Volvo Cars of Overland Park. Let's talk some Chiefs football, some training camp going on. It is game week, though. We will talk with Adam Teicher here from ESPN Chiefs Insider. Adam, welcome into the show. How are you, sir?
Good, Jason. How you doing today?
I am doing just fine. It is game week. There is an actual game coming up on Sunday. Certainly there will be people out there wearing uniforms and playing football. Before we talk about some of the practices, just what do you look for? What are you watching in a preseason game? We heard Spags say tackling. That's really it. What are you watching for?
Yeah, mainly that guys don't get hurt. I mean, I think the Chiefs have enough good things going for them that whatever happens other than injury, I think they'll be okay. I mean, I think that's kind of that should be their real goal, is to just get out of this without losing anybody and hurting their depth. But other than that, I think they're in a pretty good place right now. So I do agree with him. You do want to see some good team things, but they're not going to be scheming all that stuff up. He talked about eliminating big plays. Well, they're not going to be scheming really to stop those kinds of things. Last year we know they had a problem in the red zone. I think that's one of the other things he could have added to his list. But again, they're not going to be scheming for this game at all. So, if they fail, I don't think it's the end of the world. So I believe for maybe younger and teams that are still up and coming or have don't have the kind of hopes that the Chiefs do, realistic hopes, then maybe I think the preseason takes on a little more weight. But I just feel like for a team in the Chiefs position, just get out of it in one piece and it's really a win. Anything other than that is almost gravy.
Visiting with Adam Teicher, and you mentioned injuries. That's the first thing that you don't want to see, and we won't see a couple of guys who are already injured right now that'll be playing in the game certainly this weekend, maybe all 3 of the preseason games, but the hope is that they will be ready for week number 1 and game number 1 against the Lions, that being Kadarius Toney and Isaiah Pacheco. You talked with Brett Veach and about some of the injuries and things like that. And he said in the story that you've written here at ESPN, organizationally, we feel pretty good. Those guys will be ready to play, barring no setbacks. I think we're in a good place with both of those guys. As you're sitting there and you're talking with them and hearing them, is there a confidence coming through in that, yeah, we actually do think Kadarius Toney and Isaiah Pacheco will be good to go? Or is there a little bit of lip service to, I'm not going to say that Kadarius Toney is going to be out for a couple of weeks or Pacheco or anything. What do you take away when you talk with Brett Veach and you hear that there is a confidence organizationally that no setbacks, those guys are going to be playing against the Lions?
Yeah, no, I don't think it's lip service, because what this does to me is put pressure on both those guys now to get ready. Now it's kind of the other way. I think that if they were just sort of motivating the guy, they'd say, well, we don't know. We'll get there. We'll see if they're ready or not. But now I think the onus is on those guys to get ready, and we'll see if they do or not. But to me, the bigger issue is not whether they play or don't play against Detroit. It's how much can they play and how effective can they be when they're in the lineup. And I always wonder about about guys who miss most or all of training camp. That's a real issue, and you just can't get ready to play football without playing football. And so that's the bigger issue to me right now, is even if they do play, how much and how effective can they be?
The one thing about Kadarius Toney being out there, I think Pacheco's different, because Pacheco's effectiveness is really with the ball in his hands and being a running back. Kadarius Toney's effectiveness can even just be on the field, right? Just if he's out there offering a threat of him being the motion man, even if it's the ghost motion that's there and not handing him the ball or faking a toss to him, when he comes underneath the shotgun. Even that sort of creates a misstep here or there, or just the defense thinking. Like, I think Toney being on the field, even if he's not playing much or really all that effective, actually has more of an impact than, say, well, Isaiah Pacheco's out there, but we don't want to give him the ball because we're not trusting that shoulder yet?
Yeah, I can't imagine either guy would play a lot against Detroit, but hey, we'll see. I mean, there's still time for that to change. You know, I just wonder about the Chiefs at running back. I really do. And I've been talking about this for a while. There's just a lot of question marks there. You know, we don't know about Pacheco, and you know, we think now that he's going to be ready to play. But again, how effective and how much can he play? How much can he help them early in the year? And how much work do you get to Jerick McKinnon if he can't play? How much of that load goes to Jerick McKinnon? So the Chiefs have been pretty cautious with McKinnon. They're trying hard not to overwork him here in camp. So he's getting some work, but not a whole lot. So that tells me they're trying to they want to get him through a full season. So I don't see the Chiefs keeping a big load on McKinnon, at least not early in the season. And so what does that leave you with? That leaves you with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who we know has been what's the right word for him? Unreliable? I don't know if that's a fair thing to say about him or not. He hasn't been the player the Chiefs hoped he would be, and you know what's his ability to help them out at this point? And they also have Deneric Prince, who I'd be surprised if they gave a huge load to this early in his career. So I just don't know where the Chiefs are at running back without a healthy Isaiah Pacheco. So to me, that's a big part of this as well. Is you know, if they don't get it from Pacheco early in the season, where's it going to come from?
Is there anything, any worry developing on Clyde Edwards-Helaire that I believe this is the third practice he's been designated as out because of a sickness?
Yeah, that's, you know, this has been a guy who we talk about calling him unreliable, and I said maybe it's not fair, but you know what? He hasn't been in the lineup for them for large periods of each of his 3 seasons. Now here he's been given a golden opportunity to resurrect his career maybe, and he can't stay on the practice field consistently. So, yeah, I do think this is raises a little bit of a question about him, and maybe it's just one of those things, and he'll get over it here in the next couple of days, and we'll never hear about it again. But it does, given his unreliability in terms of staying healthy the last couple of years, I do think that's something to watch here.
Adam Teicher is our guest from ESPN. You mentioned that you get ready for football by playing football, and how effective these guys could be on the field, even if they did play, if they've been sitting out and missing camp. Of course, that also translates to Chris Jones, who still is not at camp. Brett Veach talking about that as well. What was your takeaway from hearing Brett Veach and discussing, you know, the latest with Chris Jones, that it certainly feels like there's a holding pattern right now between both sides?
Yeah. And I think it's been that way since camp started, you know, that both sides seem to be entrenched in their positions. And, you know, I think it was really instructive when camp started, and somebody asked Andy Reid whether he was surprised that Chris Jones didn't show up, and he said yes. And so I think this thing has taken a different turn for the Chiefs than maybe they thought it would. And to me, you know, the fact that he's risking a $50,000 fine per day, that tells me that Chris Jones is committed to his side. You know, he's convicted in this, that he might lose a little bit of money to see this thing through. And if you're the Chiefs, they seem to think the time maybe is on their side, that the longer this goes on, you know, Brett Veach certainly didn't say this, but the longer this goes on, maybe the pressure shifts more towards Chris Jones. I'm not sure that I necessarily agree with that, but, you know, he's the one, you know, if he starts missing time in the regular season, that's $1 million a week. That's what the fine is then. So, you know, we'll see how, you know, whether that changes Chris Jones' strategy here. But I don't know that we're a whole lot closer to a deal than they were when camp started.
Yeah, and the quote that's, you know, you reach the point where I think both parties want to just kind of take a deep breath and reset a little bit, and then the talks become less frequent. But at the same time, the start of the season is September 7th. So by nature, they're going to have to heat up again. And like I said, that's why we're still optimistic. That stands out because, you know, not being involved in any of these discussions, Adam, ever before, right? I mean, But you would think that behind the scenes, it's like these conversations continue to go on because you want to get this done. Chris Jones certainly wants the contract and he wants to get paid, and he would certainly like to, be ready to go for the start of the season. And obviously from the Chiefs standpoint, it's advantageous to have number 95 out there on the field and have this figured out and taken care of. But you mentioned it, when he didn't show up for camp, that was certainly a surprise to a lot of the Chiefs personnel, staff, organization, coaches. And I wonder if that then was the first of the, okay, let's go our separate ways. Let's, separate corners, individual corners, and, take a deep breath and reset a little bit, Brett Veach's words. And then he says, well, the start of the season is September 7th. So the conversations are going to have to heat up again, which means they're not happening right now. It means they're going to have to in the future heat up. It's just really interesting. It's like, it feels like a game of chicken that the other side is saying, no, this deadline means more to you than it means to me. Nope, this deadline means more to you than it means to me. And they both went past the first initial deadline, and the surprise was that Chris Jones didn't show up to camp. I'd have to imagine the Chiefs would be shocked and floored if he wasn't there for week number 1. But they've already been on the surprise side of it, of wait a minute, this was not expected in this negotiation with him.
Yeah, no, I hear you, and I don't think this thing has gone the way the Chiefs thought it would. And you just wonder if the Chiefs are going to give in. What are they waiting for? They've been planning for this for months now. They knew this was coming down the road. Not necessarily that he would hold out from camp, but they knew that this contract issue was coming. And it just hasn't been the Chiefs' way to let these things fester if they were going to make a last-minute concession. We've seen them draw the line with other players when it came to their contract demands. Tyreek Hill and Orlando Brown and other guys. So they've been down this road in different circumstances, but they've been down this road before and really held their ground. So I'm just wondering a little bit. I think the Chiefs, they certainly appear like they have their heels dug in, and they're not going to budge on this thing. And if that's the case, I don't know where this is headed, because clearly Chris Jones isn't interested in what the Chiefs are offering, and until he is, I wonder a little bit. And let's go back to what we were talking about with Tony and Pacheco. History is not kind to players who miss most or all of training camp. Those guys get hurt at a larger percentage of the time than guys who do participate in training camp. That's just the way it is. You got to practice football to play football, and so now I'm wondering when I think everybody agrees he really didn't need to be here for the start of camp to have a productive regular season. But now, when is that point where he does need to be here in order to have a productive regular season? I don't know when that is, but I feel like we're getting pretty close if we haven't passed that point yet.
Well, Andy Reid, it's a pretty fast game. That's a commentary from Andy Reid, right? It takes a lot to get ready for the football game. It's a pretty fast game.
Yeah, you can tell he's frustrated by the shortness of his comments, and he's very he's very careful not to criticize players publicly. And while you wouldn't describe this as a criticism, you can tell that by some of his comments that he's frustrated by the whole situation and wishes that they just get it resolved already.
Yeah, Adam Teicher's our guest from ESPN, and look, I know Andy Reid is aware of the conversations and negotiations that are going on, and he's not the GM like he was before, but he's aware of all of those things that are happening with Brett Veach and John Dorsey when they were going through all of those things. But while being aware, he's not in on every single conversation. Do you think it gets to a point where Andy Reid just simply says, he goes in with Brett Veach and says, "Hey, let's get it done. What do we need to do? Let's get it done right now." Or Andy Reid calls Chris Jones and says, "Hey, dude, let's get it done. Let's play football. You need to be here." Or does he take the full-on hands-off approach and I deal with people who are here in camp right now? Do you think Andy Reid at some point gets more hands-on with somebody who is as important as Chris Jones is to this team?
he's part of the decisions on how to make a strategy for the Chris Jones contract negotiations. He doesn't negotiate it.
Mm-hmm.
He's not involved in that part of it. But these discussions on how the Chiefs handle the Chris Jones situation are not done without his input. So, I can't imagine he would get to a point where he just says, let's just give him whatever he wants and get this over with. I don't see that coming to pass. It's a situation that clearly he's not comfortable with, but it's part of the deal. The Chiefs really haven't had to deal with this a lot during his time as their coach, but they're certainly going through it now, and this is one of the more protracted deals they've had in his time with the Chiefs. So it's been a while since they've had something like this. I mean, Orlando Brown missed the first week or whatever of camp last year.
Was it like 2 or 3 days or something? Like, it didn't feel like it was that long.
It
Maybe
wasn't
it was
very
longer.
long. Yeah, it wasn't very long. It wasn't very long.
Yeah.
You're right. But I think the sense was the Chiefs seemed to be pretty confident that was going to not be a long holdout for him. So, and it turned out they were right. They certainly don't seem to have that sense now that this thing's going to get resolved quickly.
Yeah, and there was nothing they could do with Orlando Brown at that point. Like, I mean, you can't even negotiate because it already expired. Like we talked about that at the time. Like, what's he trying to accomplish by holding out? Just to throw a fit? I'm not happy, so I'm going to show you by not being here and all of that stuff. Adam Teicher is our guest. From the Chiefs side, would there be a concern of setting a precedent, if you want to call it that, if Chris Jones holds out and then gets the money he was holding out for, that, hey, you know what, he held out and he won against the Chiefs? Is there a concern from the Chiefs standpoint that, well, we're not going to set a precedent that, you can do this for anybody else in the future, that you're going to hold out and then ultimately just play chicken and win and you'll get your money?
Yeah, that's always a concern, and the Chiefs have to be careful of that because everybody's watching, including the guys in that locker room. The other 89 guys are paying attention to what's going on here, and yes, absolutely. I mean, this would be such an un-Chiefs-like way of doing business to all of a sudden capitulate now to everything Chris Jones wants. That's just not how they've operated. They've always kind of stood fast to their belief in a contract or a trade or whatever that might be, and they've acted on it. And so, boy, I'm not saying this wouldn't happen, but just for them to just all of a sudden say, Chris, we're going to give you what you asked for 3 weeks ago, and we're just going to do it. That would be so unlike the Chiefs. That would be a very un-Brett Veach-like move and very un-Andy Reid-like move. So not saying that wouldn't happen, but, boy, I'd be really surprised if it did.
He connected the Tyreek Hill trade with Chris Jones as well, saying that, you got to keep in mind that we make that move with Tyreek. One of the determining factors was because there was an expected Chris Jones deal. And so if we sign Tyreek Hill, then the concern is, would we be able to then sign Chris Jones? And as he said, that, they hit the reset button and it was before the draft, and they knew that last offseason was getting younger and dealing with that, with the view of the next offseason would be getting Chris Jones' contract done. I think it's pretty obvious they misplayed or misread the situation of what Chris Jones might have been asking for, because Aaron Donald's contract was already done at that point. And so if they thought he was wanting Aaron Donald money and, well, we've got to trade Tyreek Hill now because we have this expected Chris Jones extension and we want to sign Chris Jones, as, he's on the defensive side, who's a significant player. Tyreek Hill's significant, but he's on the offensive side. We've got Patrick Mahomes. That, is it a misreading of the tea leaves or of where Chris Jones and his representative stood compared to the Aaron Donald contract, that, we trade Tyreek Hill because we got Chris Jones coming up and we want that flexibility because we're going to make sure we sign Chris Jones?
Well, it could be, but I have a hard time believing the Chiefs found out what Chris Jones was looking for the day before camp started.
Yeah,
you know, I mean,
sure.
they this thing has been going on. This has been coming down the pipe for a while, and they knew it. And they've been talking about it, back in the spring. And I just keep going back to that Tyreek Hill situation, in that, as soon as the Chiefs realized or thought that this contract for Tyreek Hill was going to be out of their reach or out of their comfort zone or not something they wanted to do, they pivoted like that and turned around and traded him. They found a trade market for him and had two teams involved and made a deal. And I just can't imagine they misread this situation so bad that they didn't have the same thoughts about Chris Jones at one point. And, so that's why I feel like they're going to be content to sit this out. I can't, the Chris Jones not being here is one thing, that may be the surprise in the whole thing, but they can't be surprised by the fact that he's not practicing right now, just because, this has been building for quite some time. This isn't an abrupt thing on Chris Jones' part.
Adam Teicher from ESPN is our guest. One quick one, and then we'll go to break and talk about players on the field, things like that. Omenahu's on the field right now and will be through the preseason, but then that's it for 6 weeks. They knew something was coming down, but as Andy Reid said that, it's what's the line that he used here? With the
we knew he was going to get something.
That's right. And you're never sure of the number of games, but we knew it would be something.
But we knew he was going to get something.
Is that Andy Reid's way of saying that 6 was maybe a surprise to them? That
yes,
you're never sure about the number of games?
I think it is. Now, the suspension wasn't, but maybe 3, maybe 4 games was more of an expectation, but not 6. So, I think you entirely read that situation, that comment by Andy Reid, right, in that they did catch them a little bit off guard in that sense.
Does that do anything then, strategy standpoint, for this Chiefs organization, that if they thought maybe we would have Omenihu out for a month, now it might be 6 weeks? Is there? I mean, I wonder, Adam, and I know he's been a little dinged up, as Steve Spagnuolo called it, but is there a difference in reps as guys get in training camp, if Omenihu is healthy, that, you ain't going to be ready for 6 weeks? These other guys are going to be playing in those first 6 games, so they probably need to get the reps, even though you might be running with the ones, but we need to get these other guys in here. Is there a change of strategy now that they know that, he won't be a part of the team until October 22nd in that game, that, maybe readjust some things or what they were looking at with Omenihu in this defensive line?
Well, or do you say, you know what, he's going to be away from football for 6 weeks. Do we need to get him every snap we can right now?
Yeah.
And hope that, helps prepare him for what's left of the season when he does return. I think, to me, that's a smarter strategy, that you gotta give him some work, because he's going to need it. We talked with these other guys about you need to play football, you need to practice football in order to play football. Well, he's going to be in that same situation here pretty soon. I don't know why you'd take training camp in the preseason away from him. I think that's a mistake. And, you certainly need to get some other guys ready to go, no doubt. And Felix is number 1 on that list. I think they ought to play him a lot in this preseason. But other than that, I think I'm okay with him taking some snaps away from Karlaftis, away from Mike Dana. I'm okay with all that, because I think Omenahu's going to need all the work he can get.
Adam Teicher is our guest. We'll take a quick timeout. We'll come back, and one more quick segment with Adam. We'll talk some guys on the field, the defense, and also the reaction to being coached by Eric Bieniemy in Washington. We'll do that next.
You're in the zone with Jason Anderson on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Sports Radio 810 WHB, visiting with Adam Teicher from ESPN Chiefs Insider. Training camp coverage presented by Barstool Sportsbook at Hollywood Casino, Bud Light, Greengrass Cattle Company, and Premier Volvo Cars of Overland Park. All right, Adam, so coming out of the Commanders training camp with Ron Rivera, I don't know if you've seen these quotes or not about Eric Bieniemy and the intensity. The question was, have players had to adapt to Eric Bieniemy's intensity, and have any struggled with it at times? Ron Rivera says, yeah, they have. One of the biggest things is I had a number of guys come to me, and I said, hey, just go talk to him. I said, understand what he's trying to get across to you. I think as they go and they talk and listen to him, it's been enlightening for a lot of these guys. I mean, it's a whole different approach. Again, you're getting a different kind of player from the players back in the past, especially in light of how things are coming out of college. So a lot of these young guys, they do struggle with certain things, and a lot of it is from where they've been. I mean, guys coming from certain programs are used to it. Guys coming from other programs aren't as much. So as a coach, I kind of have to assimilate and get a feel for everybody. Eric has an approach, and it's the way he does things, and it's not going to change because he believes in it. Jack has his approach. Having been a head coach, I think Jack has a tendency to try to figure out guys a little bit more as opposed to, hey, this is it, this is the way it's going to be, that type of stuff. Eric hasn't had that experience yet. And then the follow-up was, when they come to you, is it just they felt like Eric was riding them too hard? Ron Rivera, well, they just were a little concerned. So we've heard about Eric Bieniemy's coaching around the Chiefs, and Tyreek Hill even talked about what Eric Bieniemy's coaching did for him, and early on the complaints they had about Bieniemy. I read these. It's not a surprise from the things we heard around Kansas City and early on players complaining about having to deal with Bieniemy.
No, it's not. And I find it hard to believe that maybe Ron Rivera didn't prepare some of his guys or most of his guys or all of those offensive players really for what they're about to get, and tell them, hey, this is a little different and we're going to do things a little differently around here. And that's, we've struggled here, particularly to score points lately. And now we're going to do things Eric Bieniemy's way. And so I have a hard, that doesn't make sense to me that he didn't prepare some guys for what is going on out there now. But you're right. I mean, it's not just Tyreek Hill. I mean, I've talked to a number of Bieniemy's former players who loved him. He was very hard on them, but they feel like they became better players, became the players they became because of him. Jamal Charles. Ask Jamal Charles sometime about Eric Bieniemy. Loves him. Thinks he really took his career to another level after he came to the Chiefs. And, I talked to Adrian Peterson, who was with Bieniemy before he came to the Chiefs. They were together with the Vikings. And he thinks that Eric Bieniemy made him the player that he became. He had all this talent, didn't know how to harness it until Eric Bieniemy showed him the way. And there's other guys with the Chiefs that'll tell you that they really love Bieniemy. So it's just a different style, and you have to get used to it. And it makes no sense that Ron Rivera didn't have an offensive meeting and say, listen, this is our new offensive coordinator. He does things a different way, but stick with him. Stick with it. And so I think maybe because that didn't happen, or sounds like it didn't happen, they're running into some issues there.
Visiting with Adam Teicher from ESPN. Let's talk about the Chiefs team. First game coming up. Steve Spagnuolo saying that tackling is what he wants to see. Leo Chenal talked the other day, and one of the things he discussed is, playing on the ball a little bit more, lining up on the line of scrimmage. He and Willie Gay doing some of those things. He said, it's unfamiliar being an off-ball guy for so much of his life. And anything to view with he and Willie Gay doing some more of those things? Is that adding another wrinkle to the defense for Spagnuolo? Is that Omenuhu's not going to be there? Who knows about Chris Jones at this point? Defensive end or defensive players. What do you make of this training camp having Willie Gay and Leo Chenal lining up more on the line, on the ball, 2-point stance than we've seen, and Chenal talking about that's something he's trying to learn right now.
Yeah, and I think another factor that enters into this is also Drew Tranquill's presence. I think he's going to do a lot of that in space type stuff. They're doing a number of different things with him, and I think his presence maybe has a little bit of factor how the Chiefs are going to use some other guys because Tranquill seems to have a real knack for the passing game and playing in space. So I think that's part of this as well.
The defense overall, has it? We've heard Andy Reid talk about a couple of times that they've made it tough on us. The red zone, those windows, it's not easy. They've been doing some pretty good things. Justin Reid on Saturday saying, in years past the offense might have some bad days at training camp, but that was more of the offense didn't play well. Now they're saying the defense is doing some things, and that's why the offense hasn't looked great in some form or fashion. Are you seeing some of the same things? Is the defense having a really good training camp so far that you're seeing what is an expected level from year one to year two with a lot of these guys with Steve Spagnuolo's defense and communication and things like that, that there is that improvement that Andy Reid's talked about and some of the offensive players have talked about?
Yeah, I think they have looked good for the most part. One of my things I'm wondering about, like everybody else probably, is the pass rush, particularly since Chris Jones isn't there, and now Omenihu is going to be out for 6 games. So if the Chiefs are without both those guys, what are they left with pass rush-wise? Do they have enough? That was such a big part of what they got done last year, turn that pass rush around and becoming second in the league in sacks. I mean, that was such a big part of what they were doing last year. And if they don't have that consistently, what are they going to be defensively? I wonder about that. But no, they've done a nice job. Otherwise, I think in camp, there are a couple of those second-year guys who have really caught my eye in this camp. One is Brian Cook. I think Chiefs fans are really going to like Brian Cook.
Yeah.
He plays with that energy that I think the Chiefs, he'll be helpful. He'll be a useful player for them. So I think Cook has had a nice camp. Another guy who's quietly done a nice job, I think he's been disruptive to a large extent, is George Karlaftis. I think he's maybe even taken another step here. We'll see when they play for real, but I kind of like what I see from both those guys and think that the Chiefs will be better off for having them in their second season. So, those are a couple guys maybe to look for. I don't know how much they'll play on Sunday. Sunday in New Orleans, but those are a couple guys maybe to look for.
What do you make of Steve Spagnuolo and talking about Watson and Williams, that he said, they're light years ahead, but he started it with, they've had an up and down camp, but still light years ahead. And he mentioned, and this to me is the biggest point, is that expectations are higher. I talked about it earlier in the show, Adam, that, Charvarius Ward, when he showed up on the scene and filled in for, or was, put into the lineup over Orlando Scandrick, it was like, oh, thank God it's not Orlando Scandrick. And, hey, you know what? That was a pretty good play by the guy who they traded for right at cutdown day and nobody thinks anything of. And then the final year for Charvarius Ward was, he won't turn his head around. Get him the hell off the field. I'm tired of it. The guy can't turn his head around when there were no expectations. It was like, hey, that was a pretty good play by Ward. I mean, he gave up 15 yards, but he was right there. He was in the spot. And now Williams and Watson aren't 4th and 7th round draft picks. They're guys that played on a Super Bowl winning team a year ago and expected to be part of this, that defense and an expected level of improvement. I thought that was an interesting part by Spagnuolo saying, they've had an up and down camp. They're light years ahead of where they were, but expectations are higher. So they've had an up and down camp for what their expectations are this year.
Yeah, and it should be instructive. The Chiefs have been giving some other guys playing time with the ones over Williams and Watson, and I don't expect that to continue or anything like that. I think Watson and Williams will end up playing a lot for the Chiefs this year, but they had Najee Johnson before he got hurt, was playing a lot with the ones, and he was making a significant push for playing time. I think if he kept on, he hadn't gotten hurt and kept on playing the way he was playing, Najee Johnson would have been playing some for the Chiefs, and maybe a lot for the Chiefs when the season started. And now they have Echo Boydo. He's been playing some. I don't think that's going to continue, but the Chiefs wanted to get him a look and see what he looked at like in there. I mean, that tells you a little bit the Chiefs are searching for something there. They're not happy necessarily with Williams and Watson, at least not on a consistent basis. So, they're searching there, and that's sort of a sign that maybe those guys haven't played the way the Chiefs had hoped at this point. So, that's another thing to watch for the Chiefs going forward.
Adam Teicher from ESPN Chiefs Insider. Adam, as always, appreciate the time, sir. Enjoy the game on Sunday. We will talk next week and have some reaction to what we've actually seen against a different team. We'll see what happens. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely, Jason. Talk to you next week.
Absolutely. There's Adam Teicher. Our training camp coverage presented by Barstool Sportsbook at Hollywood Casino, Bud Light, Greengrass Cattle Company, and Premier Volvo Cars of Overland Park. We'll take a timeout. We will come back, and Eric Bieniemy responded. So I kind of want to hear what Eric Bieniemy had to say. I've actually already heard it. But we can play what Eric Bieniemy had to say. That was actually a pretty good answer by EB. That joked about the simple. Well, I'll say this: at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, it was none of that stuff. So we'll play what Eric Bieniemy, a really good answer to the question about if he's too hard on his players, that a little old school approach. We'll do that on the other side of the break. More Zone next.
Want to see more of The Zone? Watch the show live on the Sports Radio 810 WHB Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch.
Thank you, Adam Teicher from ESPN joining us. Chiefs play the Saints coming up on Sunday. I guess it isn't official, but the report is that Kareem Hunt is expected to sign with the Saints. He's visiting, so it's not that Kareem Hunt has signed, but said that earlier that Kareem Hunt signing with the Saints, not that he would be playing this weekend, but the report is Kareem Hunt is expected to sign with the New Orleans Saints. We had read the quote from Ron Rivera about Eric Bieniemy and some of the players that may not be enjoying Eric Bieniemy's style of coaching and the concerns over the intensity that he may coach with, and those worrying about the way in which he's saying it instead of maybe how or what he's saying, paying attention to how. But here's Eric Bieniemy and his response to that in a question with the media availability a little bit ago.
Hi. Have there been instances where players have, I guess, struggled to adapt to your coaching style and have come up to you and had a conversation about it?
And so before it even goes anywhere, I make it the point to address the conversation, because one thing, my job is to be very observant. I got to know the people that I'm discussing and working with. So my job is to address. If there's something that they may have an issue with, please, let's discuss this. Here's the reason why I felt a certain way. Here's why I said it. Now, okay, I put it back on the player. And you got to understand, we're in a grown man's business. We're in a grown man's world. My job is to make sure that I'm doing the best possible job of over-communicating clarity. I take a tremendous amount of pride in that. They also know when I'm getting on them, ain't nothing personal. What's personal is that I want us to win. I expect that particular player to be great at all times. I expect the effort to be a standard that's accepted by all of us. So when you're not reaching that, it's my job to address it. So sometimes they may like the highlights and the praise, but sometimes they may not like it. And I'm perfectly fine with that, because that's my job. Because if I ain't doing my job, my ass get fired. So it's my job and my responsibility to make sure that I'm getting our guys to do what I expect them to do.
Thought a really good answer from Eric Bieniemy there, in that, you know, it's not a surprise that the reaction has been what it has been out of Washington with the way in which Eric Bieniemy coaches, because there's been plenty of that with Chiefs players over the years of hearing about it, and Tyreek Hill talking about it as well, as saying, you know, I still have Eric Bieniemy in my head when I'm running routes and how hard I need to go, how hard I need to run, and that's why I can be the player I am, and the routes in which how fast I run things and going, and the intensity there is because of a guy like an Eric Bieniemy. Then you have was it Le'Veon Bell or was it LaShawn
McCoy?
So you have LaShawn. Yeah,
I think they both said things, but McCoy
Le'Veon
is the one
Bell
that
was about
Jamal
Andy
Charles
Reid.
responded to and all.
Yeah, Le'Veon Bell was about Andy Reid, that he'd never play for him again or whatever. And then LaShawn McCoy was about, well, there's a reason that Eric Bieniemy can't get a job is because of how he coaches and treating players and da-da-da-da, and the way that he talks to them and stuff. And then Jamal Charles coming out and defending Eric Bieniemy. So not really a surprise that some players would have the reaction they do. And also Ron Rivera sort of talking about, well, there is a difference in kids these days, as some programs they're coming out of, maybe they've had this, some programs are not, they've had that, but you got to keep the lines of communication open. It's obvious a level of standard of this is what I expect you to do, and you're not going to be coddled to be able to get there in that level of expectation and that standard. And you know what? For an organization that's been as crappy as Washington's been, there's probably nothing wrong with saying, yeah, you're not doing it right, so do it right, or we'll find somebody else to do it. And if you don't do it, I'm getting fired. This is my job.
I do think Teicher made an interesting point with the kind of asking, did Ron Rivera not get everybody some expectation setting for Eric Bieniemy? Because I could totally understand how, yeah, that could be a jarring first start for a young player in the league, which is why I think that maybe the most important part of that from Bieniemy is saying, you know, I'm going to over-communicate, a very Chiefs building phrase, but I'm going to over-communicate from the beginning. I want you to know at the front end what it's going to be like, so you understand in the middle what's happening, and then at the end you'll be able to look back and see that full picture. And that, to me, I don't want there to be a false equivalency around Eric Bieniemy where it's just like, oh, well, he's just this jackass old school coach who's just going to be cruel for no reason, right? We're just running gassers till you barf and then, no water for you. That's not what's happening here. But the tone that Eric Bieniemy takes, if you've been paying attention to the Chiefs at any point over the last several years, you understand it with some decent clarity. And mentioning Jamal Charles, I talked to him, it was 2020 or 2021, and he told the story of getting to Kansas City and then going to Andy Reid and saying, you've got to get rid of this guy. Jamal Charles got coached up by Eric Bieniemy, went to Andy Reid and said, you've got to fire Eric Bieniemy, the running backs coach at the time, obviously. You have to fire this guy because this cannot be the way that we are doing things. And then in Jamal's retelling of the story, Andy Reid had some sort of stoic kind of, okay, all right, kind of response. And now Jamal Charles and Eric Bieniemy stay in touch to this day. I asked Bieniemy about that story whenever that was, sometime in season, and he laughed at it and told the type of stories that he tells all the time about the guys that he does still have that relationship with. And that part's important to me because I do think that there's again this false equivalence that can often come with coaching of being uncaring or not seeing a human being there is the tough thing to do, and caring about the person is the soft thing to do, or players coach and all of that, and that's not how it is. Eric Bieniemy cares about these people. He maintains these relationships years and years and years after they part ways. But I also understand why that volume and some of that language would be different for some players.
Yeah, so interesting coming out of Washington, those quotes that came out yesterday, and then the response there from EB. A lot of talk today that we've had was about Brett Veach's comments about Chris Jones and about Kadarius Toney. Kadarius Toney and Isaiah Pacheco saying the expectations in the organization, as long as there are no setbacks, are that they will be ready to go week 1. Chris Jones, it's a different story in the tone in which it sounded like Brett Veach was talking about the negotiations, where I think he said that gets heated, you take a breath, you take a break, and then eventually those conversations have to start getting heated up again, but they ain't right now.
Family Leisure is finally having our summer sale. Lots of cold and rain before has